Simon says subscribe and click on the bell icon to receive notifications.
We've made the files the instructor uses in this tutorial available for free. Just click the link below in the video details to get these.
If you want to start creating stunning PowerPoint presentations whilst learning the very latest tools and techniques in PowerPoint, then this course is for you. Hi everyone, my name is Deborah Ashby and I'm a Microsoft MVP and course instructor. And I'm going to be your host for this course. I've been working with PowerPoint for over 25 years and it's gone through so many changes over that time. We've gone from a fairly standard presentation application to a fully featured, rich tool for designing modern slide decks. And over the balance of this course, we're going to run through some of the best features that PowerPoint 365 has to offer. Now, this course is designed for PowerPoint 365 users, so it's best suited for people who have a Microsoft 365 account and are using the 365 version of PowerPoint. I will say that if you are using one of these standalone versions, such as PowerPoint 2021 or 2019, then the majority of this course is still going to be relevant to you. There'll just be a couple of features that are specific to 365 that might not work for you. Now, this course covers everything you're going to need to know to get started with PowerPoint 365. We're starting from a base of very little knowledge in PowerPoint as an application. So if you're brand new to using PowerPoint, then this course is going to be great for you. But even if you're coming from another version, what you'll normally find is that even if you know some of the initial lessons, there's always going to be things that you pick up, whether it's a quick keyboard shortcut to make yourself more efficient, or a utility that you weren't aware of. So I highly recommend that you do work through this course from the beginning, but it is designed that you can dip in and dip out of lessons as and when you need. Now, this course is divided up into 8 topic-based sections. This gives you a really logical format from which to work through the content. And each section contains a number of video-led demonstrations. The videos are usually roughly 10 minutes or under. We might find a couple in there which are slightly over that, but everything is nice and bite-sized so that you can do a lesson whenever you have a few free moments. And you also have access to downloadable course and exercise files. So each lesson has 2 course files, a start and a finish file. So you can open up the start file and work through the content with me. And I've provided the finish file to make it easier for you to dive around into different sections if required. And at the end of each section, you will find an exercise with some instructions so that you can practice the skills that you've learnt. So without further ado, let's get going. Before we dive into the content and start building an awesome presentation, I thought I'd start out by making sure that you're completely clear on the difference between PowerPoint 365 Online and PowerPoint Desktop. Because in my experience, this causes quite a bit of confusion, particularly for people with new Microsoft subscriptions. Now, historically, the way that Microsoft have delivered applications is in a standalone form. For example, you might be familiar with the terms PowerPoint 2016, PowerPoint 2019, PowerPoint 2021. Those are what we call standalone versions. But then in recent years, and mainly to assist sharing and collaboration, Microsoft introduced PowerPoint 365. And this is part of the overall Microsoft 365 Office suite. So instead of purchasing PowerPoint 2016, for example, and downloading it directly to your PC, we now pay for a subscription to Microsoft 365. And that's a small monthly charge to essentially rent the software from Microsoft. Now, what is the advantage of using PowerPoint 365? Well, it means that we always have access to the latest features and updates, because as soon as something new is added to PowerPoint, it gets pushed out to all Microsoft 365 subscribers. So if you're using a standalone version, you don't get those latest updates. In order to get the latest version of PowerPoint, you would need to purchase and buy the next version up. So that is the main reason why it's beneficial to use PowerPoint 365. The other thing that you get with PowerPoint 365, which you don't get with the standalone versions, is access to an online portal. So currently on the screen, I'm in the desktop version of PowerPoint. And if you've used PowerPoint before, this should look fairly familiar. We have all of our ribbons and all of our commands, and we're ready to start building our presentation. But in addition to this, we also have access to a handy online portal. And this is what the portal looks like. Now, to get to this portal, you simply need to go to www.office.com. You can see that up there in the URL bar, and sign in using your Microsoft 365 credentials. So that's going to be your email address and your password that you used when you set up or subscribe to Microsoft 365. That will take you into this main hub page, and if we click the app launcher in the top corner, this is where we can access all of our applications. And you can see we have access to PowerPoint online in here. So this is the online version of PowerPoint. Now, why is it beneficial having access to this portal? Well, it means that you can edit and work on your presentations when you're on the go. So maybe you start a document in the office in the desktop app, but then when you're on the train on the way home, you need to go in and make a change. No problem. As long as you have an internet connection, you can simply go to this browser and you can open up any of your files from here. And the good news is that any changes you make, synchronize and upload to the cloud so that when you go back into the office the next day and reopen this file in the desktop version, the changes that you made on the train are going to be there. Now, this all relies on you having your files saved into OneDrive. And we're going to talk more about that when we go through the section on saving. Now, if I click on Home, notice over on the right-hand side, we have this Install button just here. So when you create your Microsoft 365 account and you go into this portal, if you want the desktop versions of the 365 applications, you can simply install them from here. And the desktop application is the full version of PowerPoint that you see just here. So that is the difference between PowerPoint Online and PowerPoint Desktop. Make sure you have that straight in your mind because it's going to be really important and beneficial for you to know. So with all that said, let's dive into the content.
For the next section, you'll want to download the course exercise files. Click the link below in the video description to get these. You can also scroll through the details to find timestamps for each section in this course. If you're enjoying this training, please leave us a comment.
It's time now to do exercise 1. And in this exercise, there isn't really anything too much for you to work through, but we just want to set ourselves up for success to do the other exercises in this course. So the first thing I'd like you to do is just to ensure that you have downloaded and saved the course and exercise files. Make sure that you've stored them somewhere safe so that you can access them easily. Next, I'd like you to ensure that you understand the difference between PowerPoint Online and PowerPoint Desktop. And remember, you can always go back and review the lessons in this section if you need to catch up on anything. The next thing I'd like you to do is just simply to practice logging in and out of the online portal with your Microsoft 365 credentials. Now, if you do this every day anyway, then you can skip over this step. But if this is all new to you, you want to make sure that you can access that online portal. And then finally, I'd like to review the Cool Beans Coffee Company presentation that you'll find in the exercise files folder. This is the presentation that we're going to be building throughout the balance of all of these exercises. So it's good to be able to see the end product before we get going. As I said, there isn't a particular answer to this exercise, so let's move into the next section. Before we dive straight into creating our first presentation, I thought it'd be good to take a moment just to run through some of the golden rules when it comes to good presentation design. Because I think there is very much a tendency to get a little bit excited at the beginning and dive into a blank presentation, start adding text, graphics, animation, all of that fun stuff, without really thinking too much about the overall design of our slides. And there are some really important rules and best practices that you should adhere to ensure that you're creating a presentation that is interesting, engaging, and accessible. So let's take a look at these rules. Now, it's really important that before you even begin to build your presentation, that you think about what the goal is. So what are you aiming for with this presentation? Who's it going to be presented to? What's the environment it's going to be presented in? What key questions does this presentation need to answer? And if you're presenting to key stakeholders and shareholders, they're going to be most interested in what the problem is and what the solution is. So it's really important that you identify any pain points and problems near the beginning of the presentation, and then as you go through, you can show them what the solution is. Don't make them wait all the way to the end before you get to this bit. And make sure that any solutions that you present are presented clearly and backed up with things like stats. And when you are adding things like charts into your PowerPoint presentations, make sure they're clear and make sure they're easy to read. Even if you're building a presentation that's a bit more fun, maybe it's not for business, maybe it's to do with the Ultra Challenge that you're running or an after-school club. This is also going to affect how we build our presentation because the audience is different. So think ahead of time about what the goal of the presentation is, and that will help you think about how you can design your slides and which visuals would be best to present. Now, carrying on from that, point number 2, know your audience. The way that we design presentations for a business audience will be very different to the way that we design presentations for an after-school club, for example. So very quickly, we need to ascertain who's going to be watching the presentation, what's most important to them, and what the environment is. And the environment is also very important. For example, if you're presenting in a very large auditorium, you need to make sure that you're designing your slides so that even the person sitting in the very back row feels engaged, feels included, and can see everything on the screen. So this would relate to things like font size, the colors that you're using, the contrast, the images. And that might not necessarily be as important if you're just presenting in a very small meeting room. So again, you need to think about this before you even start your presentation. Rule number 3, create an outline first. Now, if you're not sure what I mean by an outline, it's basically a plan of how your slides are going to look. Now, you could do this just on a piece of paper. You can draw some square boxes and kind of sketch out what you want to go on each slide, what types of images you want on each, or alternatively, you could do a mock-up in PowerPoint like I have just here. And the main advantage of creating an outline is that it makes you more efficient because you already have an idea as to what's going on each slide before you start to build them. And it can also give you a really good overview of the flow of your presentation and where you need to make changes. So in general, the way that I do my outlines is I basically just write out all of my slides and sections. So you can see I've got an introduction section just here and then all the slides that are going to go in there. And that really just helps me visualize what graphics I need and how I'm going to build this presentation. Which leads me on to rule number 4, decide on visuals. A picture says 1,000 words. And in general, the human brain can remember images over lots of text. So I'm a big fan of including lots of imagery and visualizations in my presentations. And there are so many cool websites that you can go to now where you can download lots of really interesting graphics, photos, videos for absolutely free. And I'm going to talk to you more about that in the next lesson when we talk about free resources. But again, there's lots of different types of visualization you can add into presentations. We could add pictures, photos, charts, graphics, infographics. We have an icon library in PowerPoint. We can add video. And you also need to start thinking about your theme colors. What is going to be your color palette for this presentation? We should always have 3 or 4 colors that we use consistently throughout. If we start adding in more than that, then the presentation just starts to look untidy and not joined together. Font style is also very important. Again, stick to a few fonts, and in general, try and stick to the same font family. So think about your slides, think about the information that's going on them, and what visualizations you might want to use to represent that information. Now you can see here an example of an infographic. And infographics are so popular these days. And that is because infographics generally tend to tell a story. And people love storytelling, and imagery over walls of text. And you'll find lots of infographic templates within PowerPoint. And again, I'm going to show you those later on. And you can see in this slide a really good example of how adding an infographic like this to demonstrate different steps in a process is a lot more interesting for our audience to look at than simply a list of bullet points. So really think about those visuals. That leads me on to golden rule number 5, text. Less is more. I'm sure we've all sat through presentations where we're staring at slide after slide of boring text. And a lot of speakers make the mistake of simply reading out the text that they have on the slide. So they're effectively making themselves redundant. Now, lots of text is just going to send your audience to sleep. So I always like to employ the rule of 5-5-5. So no more than 5 words per line, 5 lines per slide, and 5 text-heavy slides in a row. The idea of slides is that we just have very simple, basic key talking points, and then it's our job as the speaker to elaborate on those points. We don't need to put everything that we want to say actually on the slide. Rule number 6, use readable fonts. Now, this should be fairly self-explanatory, but over my years working with PowerPoint, I've seen all kinds of weird and wonderful things. Now, in general, it's good to stick to no more than 2 or 3 fonts in your presentation. Any more than that, and things can start to look a little bit messy and not very joined together. And what I tend to do is that I will use fonts that all fall within the same font family. For example, you can see here we have the Lato family of fonts, and we have different style fonts within that family. So by choosing a font family, you're ensuring that all of the fonts, whilst they are different and give a different look and feel, they all work really nicely together. And then we have the opposite problem where some people are a little bit scared to use different fonts in their presentation. And what you end up with, if you're just using the same font on every single slide, is kind of a flat, boring presentation. So don't be scared to combine different fonts, just be mindful of the fonts that you're combining and generally stick to 2 or 3. Golden rule number 7, be mindful of color in your presentation. You can see here an example of some really bad color usage. Now, I'm not saying that you're ever going to turn the background of your slide neon green, but I have seen things like this before, particularly neon text on white backgrounds. Now, not only is this going to give your audience a headache, it's really difficult for people with accessibility issues to read. So stay away from anything that has poor contrast. Instead, think about using high contrast colors. So you can see here in all of these examples, we either have a light background with dark text or a dark background with lighter text. So it doesn't mean that you just have to stick to black and white in your presentations. You can use color, just be mindful of the colors that you're using. Golden rule number 8, design for wide screen. You'll see when we open up PowerPoint, there is an option to design slides for widescreen. And I would always recommend that you choose that option because they're going to fit and look nice for anybody using a widescreen, which is most people these days, but they're also going to look fine for people using a smaller resolution screen. So if in doubt, design for wide. Golden rule number 9, be consistent with style. For example, if you have an image in your presentation, like you can see here, we've got this image of a peacock feather, try and tie the other elements of your presentation to the colors within that image. This is a great way of almost creating your own theme. Now you can see here underneath that image, I've picked out 3 colors from this image using the Eyedropper tool in PowerPoint. And again, this is an amazing tool that allows us to pick specific colors from images, and we can then use those elsewhere in our presentation. So what we end up is a really nice quick way of ensuring that the colors that we're using across the slides all tie together. When it comes to animation, less is more. I've seen some really crazy presentations over the years. You know, the kind where text is flying in from all different angles. We have different types of animation applied to each point, and it just generally looks a little bit chaotic and a complete mess. So animation is fine to use, just be mindful of the type of animation you're using. Keep it subtle and always ask yourself the question, is this adding to the presentation or is it distracting? So in general, for bullet points, I tend to use things like this slide in or maybe even a fade in. These are nice subtle effects that make your presentation feel more dynamic, but they're not over the top, crazy, and distracting. Rule number 11, consider templates. If in doubt, you can use one of PowerPoint's inbuilt templates to get you started. It's a little bit intimidating sometimes just loading up a blank presentation and starting to build something from scratch. So if you're not sure, you can choose a template. Again, I'm going to show you how these work and how you can use them. And all of the templates within PowerPoint are completely customizable. So if you don't like the color or the images, you can easily switch those out. But you have the bare bones of your presentation already sketched out and you haven't had to do it. Golden rule number 12, I've already briefly mentioned this, don't read from the slide. You should just have some basic bullet points on the slide. You're the one who's there to actually present and elaborate on those points. And the final rule, end with action points. So once your presentation is over, don't just simply end it and leave the room. You want to leave your audience with some action points. For example, maybe you want them to review this presentation. Maybe you want them to practice the skills they've learned. Maybe you're going to say to them, now that you've learned these skills, I want you to go away and create your presentation and email it to me. So you might want to leave them with a little task. You could even add something like a QR code so they can jump to specific websites, or your social media handles at the bottom, and the action point might be to follow you on those social media platforms. So leave your audience with something, don't just end the presentation. So those are some of my golden rules when it comes to good presentation design. Follow those rules and you are well on the way to designing something engaging, interesting, and completely awesome. In this lesson, we're going to set ourselves up for success by running through some of the free resources that we have access to that can really take our PowerPoint presentations to the next level. And when I say resources, I'm talking about free resources. So free images that we can use, free videos, free icon sets, and so much more. So I'm going to show you a few of my favorite things that I use every time I'm putting together a PowerPoint presentation. And maybe you'll want to use them too. Now, the first website that I always head to if I'm looking for an image or a video is pexels.com. Pexels has a really nice simple interface. You can see here we have a big old search in the middle, and we can choose to search for photos or for videos. So if I was looking for some photos of mountains, I can simply type in the keyword, press enter. It's going to go away and check out these pictures. They're such high quality and completely free to use for everybody. Now, do be a little bit careful in here because mixed in with all of these free ones, the majority are free, we do have some that need to be paid for. So if I scroll down, you can see here, these are sponsored photos iStock. So these are ones that need to be paid for. You do get a discount with this code, but don't accidentally click on one of these because you will be asked to pay for it. Everything else is free. So all you need to do is find the image that you want to download, for example this one, and click on the download button in the bottom. That's going to download to the downloads folder on your PC or wherever you have downloads set to save to, and then you can simply pick it up from there and use it in your PowerPoint presentation. And of course, we're going to be taking a look at how to insert images and format them a bit later on in this course. But that is how simple it is to download photographs from Pexels. And it works exactly the same if you'd like to download a video. We would simply choose video, and then we can search for, let's do mountains again, and we're going to get access to a bunch of really high quality, short looping videos that we can use for free in our presentations. So Pexels is the first website I always go to. Along similar lines, if I can't find exactly what I'm looking for on Pexels, the next place I go to is unsplash.com. And this is another very similar website. It's a site that contains lots of royalty-free photos and videos that you are free to use in your PowerPoint presentations. And it works pretty much in the same way. We have a search bar just here. Let's type in mountains, keep things consistent, press enter, and we're going to get a whole bunch of images. Some of these will be the same as what you find on Pexels, but there are different images in here as well. So two really great free resources for royalty-free images and video. Another website that I find myself going to all the time is the Noun Project. And the Noun Project is where you can find icons. Now, you will see when we get into PowerPoint, PowerPoint does have its own icon library, but the icons are very limited. You don't have huge amounts of icons to choose from, and if you're looking for something very specific, you might need to look further afield, and the Noun Project is a great website for this. We have a very simple search bar. Again, all we need to do is type in what we're looking for. Let's say I'm looking for an icon of an apple. I can hit enter. It's going to go away and search, and it's going to return all of these icons of apples. So if I decide that I want to choose this one, I can click on it, and then I get the option to download as an SVG or a PNG. And if you take a look at the bottom here, we can actually make customizations. So if I wanted this to be a green apple, I can change it to green. I can change the background color if I wanted to. I've got mine set to transparent, and then I can choose if I want to download the SVG version or the PNG. Now notice just above it says royalty-free license. So this particular icon that I've selected, I can download for free and use, no problem. You will find that some of the icons on the Noun Project, you need to have a subscription. And if you did want to subscribe to the Noun Project, last time I checked, it was about $40 a year. So if you find yourself using a lot of icons in presentations, it's probably worth it. But it is worth knowing that there are plenty of free icons available on here. And of course, we're going to be looking at icons a lot more later on in this course. Now, a website that I've found myself going to more and more often recently is this one just here, coolers.co. Now, what coolers.co allows you to do is basically create color palettes. So if you're somebody who's not particularly good with color and knowing which colors go together, coolers.co makes it really, really simple. For example, if I go to Tools and go to Explore Palettes, this allows me to see all of these different palettes, and each palette has a bunch of colors that really work well together. So if I'm a bit unsure as to the colors I want to use, but I want to make sure that my colors work well, this is a great website for this. And you'll notice as we hover over each color, you can see the hexadecimal code for that color. So this makes it really easy just to simply copy these and paste them into PowerPoint. And we are going to use colors from these palettes in our PowerPoint presentation. So I'll show you the full process of how you copy these and where you paste them in PowerPoint a bit later on. But this is a great website for sorting out your color palettes. And then the final website that I go to often is Pinterest. Now you might be thinking to yourself, why on earth would you go to Pinterest for a PowerPoint presentation? Well, simply people have so many good ideas and they post them on Pinterest. So you can see I've just put in the search bar modern PowerPoint design, and it's pulled back all of these different presentations. So if I'm lacking a little bit of inspiration, I like to take a look at these, and it sort of gives me an idea as to what people are doing out there in the modern slide design world, and I can try to replicate this, obviously make it different to this author, but it just gives me some inspiration and ideas about slide layout. So I definitely recommend having a little browse through different PowerPoint presentations that you can find on Pinterest. So those are some of my favorite websites when it comes to free resources. Check them out, bookmark them, because we're going to be using these throughout the balance of this course. It's time now to do exercise 2. And in this exercise, we're just going to review some of the principles that we've learnt in this section of the course. So the first thing that I'd like you to do is ensure that you understand the rules of good presentation design. I'd then like you to review any older presentations that you have and really just look at them and think about how you could change them to improve their readability and accessibility. Now, of course, this is optional. You don't have to do this. You might not even have any older presentations to review. But if you do, just start to think about how you could improve them based on what you've learnt in this section. And then finally, I'd just like you to start getting those ideas flowing when it comes to good presentation design. So I'd like you to browse on Pinterest and look at examples of good presentations. That's it for this exercise. There isn't any particular answer to this. It's just some things for you to review. So let's move on to the next section. If you want to get up and running with a presentation super quickly, PowerPoint comes with hundreds of inbuilt themes and templates. Now you might be thinking to yourself, well, what is the difference between a theme and a template? So let's explore that first of all. Now I've opened up PowerPoint. This is a new blank presentation that you can see on the screen. If I go to the File tab just here, this is going to take me into the Backstage area. Now I'm going to close down my blank presentation, go back up to File, and we're going to go down to New. Now what you'll see at the top here are some of the presentations, the templates that I've used recently. The first one is always going to be blank presentation because that is one of the most common. Most people in general start from a blank presentation, but you don't have to. If we scroll down, notice that we have two tabs just here, Office and Custom, and this is our templates and themes area. Now templates and themes are different. Themes control the look and feel of your document, so the colors, the fonts, the effects that are in use, whereas a template is basically an outline for a full presentation. A template comes with placeholders, text, images, and you simply jump in there and customize it. So let's take a look at themes first of all. Now I'm clicked on Office. This is showing me all of the Office themes and templates. And just for the record, the custom area is for any templates that you create and save. Again, we will be looking at that a bit later on. Now, notice underneath the search bar where we have suggested searches, one of them is themes. Now, if you can't see themes down there for any reason, you can simply type themes into the search bar above. But if we click on themes, this is going to show us all of the different themes that we could apply to our presentation. And you can see we have lots and lots of them in here. Now, some of these themes have different variations. For example, if we click on this Ion Boardroom theme, it's going to open up and you can see that we have different color variations. So if I don't like purple, I could choose green, this orange color, or blue. So I quite like this green. I'm going to choose it and click on Create. And you can see exactly what that does. It applies the theme to the first slide in my presentation, and I've got my placeholders just here. That's what these dotted boxes are. They're placeholders for text. So I can add in my text. I can then go up to the Home tab, and in the Slides group, I can see all of the different layouts that are going to apply depending on the type of slide that I choose to insert. But just be aware that this little drop down contains different layouts. So that is a theme. It's just the look and feel. It doesn't contain any text or any images. Let's go back to File and New, and this time we're going to take a look at a template. Now, if I scroll down, I can see that I've got some templates I can choose here, but if I know specifically what I'm looking for, I could type it up here into the search bar and search for it instead. For example, maybe I'm looking to create a presentation that's going to be a sales pitch. I can type that in, press enter, or hit the magnifying glass to start searching. And you can see it's going to return all of the presentations that match those keywords. So let's say that I'm going to choose this one here with these nice plants on it. If I click to open this up, it's going to show me a little bit of information about this template. I can simply click on Create, and it's going to load that presentation. And can you see the difference here? This time we get a whole bunch of slides that already contain placeholder text and images. And this is called placeholder text because we can switch out any of these images and obviously change the text, change the colors that are in use to truly make it suit what our presentation is all about. But templates give us an amazing jumping off point. They definitely do a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to slide design. One advantage of having a Microsoft 365 subscription is that you get access to PowerPoint's Quick Starter Outline tool. And this tool can create an outline for you very quickly, and you can choose the theme that you want to apply. Now you're going to find this little tool by clicking on File. We're going to go back down to New and scroll down to where we have our templates. Now Quick Starter is the first template that you can see here. It says underneath Start an Outline. So if we click on this, it's going to open up this little window where it says search here to get started. So we can type the name of the topic of our presentation. So maybe I'm creating a presentation about the solar system, or maybe I'm creating a sales pitch or a marketing strategy, or maybe this is a presentation for an after-school club. So maybe I want to create a presentation related to softball. Whatever it is, we can simply type our keyword in here. Notice below we have 4 small topics that we can choose from simply by clicking on them. Now, just for quickness sake, I'm going to use one of these topics. Let's just say that I want to create a presentation all about Paris. So I'm going to click on Paris, and you can see it asks me to select my starter slides. So it's given me the bare bones of an outline, things that I might want to include in my presentation, such as the etymology, the history, the geography, the administration, what the economy is like, things like that. So these are going to be really useful if I'm doing a presentation on Paris and I need to show these key points. Now, of course, you can deselect any ones that you don't want. So maybe I'm going to deselect international relations. Let's deselect infrastructure and administration. Let's click on next at the bottom. And I can then go in and choose a theme for my presentation. So if we scroll down, I'm going to choose this one. This is quite Parisian. Let's select it and click on Create. So it's going to go away and it's going to build that presentation for me based on the outline that I've selected and also the theme. And if we scroll through, you can see exactly what that looks like. It's basically created a slide for each of those different topics. Now, if you take a look at the first 2 slides here, where we have the slide number next to them, you can see here 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice that for the first 2, it has a strike through. And that's because these slides aren't technically part of the presentation. The first slide is really informational and it's kind of showing us how to get started with this particular template. And you'll notice at the bottom, we have a whole bunch of notes about this template below. The second slide is also showing me other topics related to Paris. So you can see here, France, United States, Germany, it's giving me other countries. And you'll notice on the right hand side, it's giving me a little hint as to how I can add to this presentation. So it says use Smart Lookup to learn more. Highlight one of the related topics, right click on the topic and choose Smart Lookup. So if I select France from this list and do exactly as it says, let's right click. Now notice we don't have Smart Lookup in this list. And that's because this has obviously changed since this template was created. It's actually this option just here, Search France. That's basically the same as doing a Smart Lookup. And what will happen is on the right hand side, it's going to go away. It's going to trawl the web for information about France. So if I want to add some more facts in, this gives me all of the details about that particular topic at a glance, which is going to help me build out more slides in my presentation. We can click close to close down this little pane. So this can be quite useful, but if you don't want these slides, you can simply select both of them. And if you need to select multiple slides, you just need to hold down Shift to select that second one, and then we can press Delete to get rid of those slides. And now we just have our presentation. Notice that we have a combination of included text, but also we have placeholders in here. So wherever you see these little dotted boxes, these are what we refer to as placeholders. And it's telling me that a subtitle needs to go in here. If I go to the second slide, this is the contents. This is going to list out all of the contents of my slide. Then I have a page for each and I can start adding whatever content I need to add. So quick starter outline slides are another really great way just to get up and running really quickly. One of the biggest differences between PowerPoint 365 and previous standalone versions like 2016, 2019, 2021 is how we save. In those previous versions, we'd save a file to a folder, and in order to save our changes, we'd have to keep remembering to press Ctrl S or go to File, Save. Now, PowerPoint 365 works slightly differently because when we save up into the cloud. When you have a Microsoft 365 account, you also have access to OneDrive cloud storage. And I highly recommend that you get into the habit of saving all of your files into the cloud. It offers a number of different advantages, one of them being that your changes are automatically saved. Now notice that I have a blank PowerPoint presentation open just here. And when you open a brand new blank presentation, it's just going to have the title of Presentation 1, Presentation 2, Presentation 3. You can see up in the left-hand corner, mine is called Presentation 2. So I need to save this before I start working on it. And I'm going to save mine into the cloud, into OneDrive. Now, in order to do this, you need to have OneDrive synchronized with your PC. That is outside the scope of this course, but once you do, you're going to be able to see all of your OneDrive folders in File Explorer, which makes saving really easy. So if we go to File, down to Save As, notice in the Save As area over here, I have two different OneDrives. So this OneDrive down here is my personal OneDrive that's attached to a personal email address. And this one just here is my business OneDrive, OneDrive for Business, attached to my business email address. So you might have one in here, you might have two, you might even have three. Now, if you don't see your OneDrive storage set up underneath here, you can simply click on Add a Place at the bottom. You can choose what you want to set up, for example, OneDrive for Business. You're going to need to enter in your Microsoft 365 email address and password, and once you've done that, you'll be able to see it listed as mine are here. Alternatively, if you click on Browse at the bottom, it's going to open up File Explorer, and if you have OneDrive synchronized to your PC, you'll be able to see your OneDrive storage in here. Now let's just cancel out of here because I have mine sitting here. So I'm going to save into my business OneDrive. I'm going to save it into the Documents folder. Now I'm going to create a new folder and I'm going to call this Course Files. And click on OK. So now I can simply select this folder and I'm going to name my presentation. So I'm just going to call this My Initials First Presentation. Notice the file extension PPTX. This is the default standard PowerPoint presentation. We can then simply click on Save, and that file is now saved up into the cloud. So not only can I access it, open it and work on this presentation while I'm at my desk, if I'm on the train, for example, I can simply fire up a browser, log into my Microsoft account, and my file will be there. So I can work on it anytime, anywhere. Now, as soon as I save this presentation up into the cloud, something happened here. If you take a look at this little bar underneath, this is what we call the Quick Access Toolbar. Notice we now have this auto save toggle toggled on. Before we saved this into the cloud, this was actually toggled off. So this is now going to save every single change I make, and I don't have to worry about PowerPoint crashing or my PC crashing and losing any of my work. It also means that as I'm working through this presentation, making changes, so maybe I add a title in here, I don't have to keep remembering to press Ctrl S to save or going File, Save. So everything is nice and automated. So all changes I make are now saving back to the cloud. Let's jump across to the online portal so you can see what I mean. So let's pretend the scenario is I've finished working on this presentation at my desk, I close PowerPoint for the day, and now I'm on the train home on my tablet device and I want to work on this presentation. All I need to do is fire up a browser, go to office.com or microsoft.com, sign in to my Microsoft 365 account, and now I'm in my portal. So if I'm on the train on my tablet device, I simply need to log in, and then if I scroll down, I should find that the presentation that I was editing in the office is at the top of the list. There it is, DA First Presentation. So I can simply click on it. It's going to open it in PowerPoint Online, which is a slimmed down version of the full desktop application, and I can carry on editing this. I have everything I need within this online version of PowerPoint. And this works in exactly the same way. Every change I make is automatically being saved back to the cloud. And if you take a look in the title bar up here, you can see a little cloud icon with a tick, and it's telling me that I saved just now. And notice if we jump back to the desktop version of PowerPoint, the changes that I made, that subheading I added when I was working with it in the online portal, have now automatically updated in this copy. So saving to the cloud provides you with a really seamless way to work, and it's less likely that you're going to lose any of your changes, and you don't have to think about saving your file. It's time now to do exercise 3. And in this exercise, we're going to practice some of the skills that we've learned in this section of the course. So the first thing I'd like you to do is fire up PowerPoint, and I'd like you to use the Quick Starter template and create an outline. And I'd like you to search for the history of coffee. And I want you to include all suggested slides in the presentation. I'd like you to then apply the headline theme and use Designer to customize the look and feel of the slides. Finally, I'd like you to save the presentation to the cloud, and you can choose a folder of your choice. If you'd like to see my answer, then please keep watching. So the first thing I asked you to do here was to create a presentation based on the Quick Starter outline. So I'm going to go up to File, we're going to go to New, and if we scroll down to our Office templates, notice that the first template we have in here is Quick Starter. This is going to open up a little box where we can search for different topics. And I asked you to search for the history of coffee. Let's click on Search. I'm going to choose this one just here, so let's click on History of Coffee, and I told you to include all of the suggested slides. So we're going to keep everything here ticked. Let's click on Next. And now we can pick a theme for our slides. And the one I asked you to pick was this one just here, the headline theme. Let's click it and click on Create. So this is going to put together a presentation based on those parameters. And you can see here we get 2 slides at the beginning, which just go through how outliner slides work. And then we have our presentation. I then asked you to use Designer to restyle these slides. So if we click on the title slide just here and then click on the Designer button to pop it open, you can see we get some different templates we can use, and these will be related to the topic that we've selected. So I'm going to choose this slide here for my title slide. Look how nice that looks. If we go to the next slide, again, Designer is going to generate some ideas for us, and we can choose something that we think matches. So if I look at some of these, let's go for this one just here. And this is pretty much all I needed you to do, was just to run through selecting different slide layouts. Now, of course, we don't have any text on here as yet. You could change that by adding some content. You could even use something like Copilot, if you have access to it, to generate the content for you. But this is basically what I was looking for. The final thing I asked you to do was to save the file to the cloud. So for this, we just need to go to File and Save As, and I told you to select a cloud location of your choice. So I'm going to browse to a cloud location. I'm going to name my file History of Coffee, and I'm going to save it as a .pptx and click on Save. That's all I need you to do. I hope you got an okay with that, and I will see you in the next section. If you're new to PowerPoint or Microsoft applications in general, it's important to understand the interface and exactly what you're looking at, because this is going to help you be able to find commands that you need to use quicker. Now, I've still got the presentation that we were working on in the last lesson loaded up on the screen. And this gives us a good opportunity to go through some of the elements of the interface. So starting in the top left-hand corner, this is where you're going to see your file name. And we can also see the status, whether it's saved, whether it's saving, or whether it's waiting to upload. Now, if we click this area, this is where we can come if we want to rename this file. So this is a really nice quick way of renaming. Simply click the current title and change it from here. You can even change the location that you're saving into. Now, if we move across this title bar, right in the middle here, we have a big old search bar. And if I'm clicked somewhere down in my presentation and I want to quickly jump up to that search bar, there is a keyboard shortcut of Alt-Q. You can see my cursor is now up in that search area. And what I can do here is I can search for different things. So maybe I want to insert a shape. I can type in shapes and notice underneath actions it's basically showing me that shapes command. And if I hover my mouse over it, there is my shapes gallery and I can simply select a shape. So this is particularly useful if you're finding the ribbons pretty overwhelming and you're not able to quickly find commands. Notice in here we also have the option to find in slides, so this will help us if we have the word shapes that we're looking for, or we can view different types of media related to shapes. So this search bar is great for finding tools. That's the main reason I use it. Now underneath there we have our ribbons and our tabs. So these, the labels, are called tabs, and the actual commands underneath, these are called ribbons. And ribbons are just these horizontal menus. Each ribbon contains different commands, and those commands are divided down into logical groups. So we have a slides group just here, and on this we have all of our commands related to slides. We have a font group, we have a paragraph group, a drawing group, editing, so on and so forth. And on the home ribbon in general, you'll find the tools, the commands that you use most frequently. But if we go to the insert ribbon, this is where you would come if you wanted to insert something into your PowerPoint presentation. That might be a shape. It might be an icon, it might be a picture, a table, a screenshot. There's a whole manner of different things that we can add to our slides. Now I won't go through each of these tabs, I'll leave you to explore, but everything is organized very logically. Now one thing to note is that you might find that you don't have this developer ribbon that you can see on mine just here. Now that's not a problem. Most people haven't activated the developer ribbon, and I will show you a bit later on how you can show the developer ribbon if you need it. This in general is where we find things like macros and VBA. So not everybody needs to use this. Now, one final thing to notice here is that notice that in the PowerPoint presentation, if I click on this first heading is basically contained within a text box, and text boxes hold information. Now, PowerPoint sees text boxes as just shapes, a rectangle shape in this instance. So if you take a look up at our ribbons, can you see that I now have what we call a contextual ribbon called Shape Format? And this contains all of the commands that I might need to format and manage this shape. If I click away and just click on the blank slide, notice that shape format ribbon disappears because it's a contextual ribbon. It means it only appears when I actually need it when I'm clicked on a shape. And you'll see these contextual menus pop up from time to time depending on what you're doing in the slide. What you'll also find in the corner of some of these groups are these little diagonal arrows. And if we click on any one of these, it's basically going to open up more options. So you can see when I clicked this arrow in the Shape Styles group, it opens up the Format Shape pane on the right hand side, which gives me lots of additional options when it comes to formatting this shape. Now, these little diagonal menus won't always open up in a pane. If we go back to home and do the same for the font group, this time we get a dialog box. But again, it still contains just additional features related to this group. Now, underneath our ribbons, this is where we have the quick access toolbar. And we briefly touched on this when we were taking a look at autosave in the last lesson. Now currently my quick access toolbar doesn't contain a great deal. We have autosave, we have undo, we have save, which is basically automatic, and then we have redo. So this will repeat the last command. Now notice there it says repeat ruler, and that reminds me of another important point. I would recommend that you add rulers to your presentation. Now notice I don't have any rulers so far, but if we go up to the View tab and put a check in ruler, I now get horizontal and vertical rulers. These are particularly important when you're dealing with alignment in a slide. So I recommend that you turn those on. Now this tiny little toolbar underneath is an area that we can customize, and we can add any command from any ribbon to this quick access toolbar. So this serves as a quick way of accessing commands that we use frequently so we don't have to hunt through each and every ribbon. And I'm going to show you how to customize that a bit later on. Now the main part of the interface is made up of this split screen. So on the left hand side where you can see slide 1, This is like our slide organizer area. As we create new slides, we're going to see them listed out here. It's somewhere we can come to select different slides to load into the main pane, and we can also do things like move our slides around, add sections, duplicate and copy slides. And whatever slide we're clicked on in this organizer is going to show in the main window. And then right at the bottom, we have the status bar. Now the status bar serves two purposes. It allows us to display useful information about what's happening currently in our slide deck. And on the other side, this is where we can switch views, the way that we're looking at our presentation. Now notice on the left, it says slide 1 of 1. So this is displaying useful information about how many slides I have in my presentation. It's telling me no spelling errors were found. It's telling me that I'm using English United States, and my accessibility so far is good, which would make sense because we barely have anything in our presentation. Now we can customize this status bar by right-clicking, and we can choose the information we're interested in showing. And then on the right-hand side, we have different ways to view our presentation. So the default is normal view. You can see that highlighted in grey, but I could choose to switch to slide sorter view, which isn't particularly useful when we only have one slide. We are going to come back to these later on. We have reading view. And then finally, we have slideshow view. Now, you will find yourself jumping in and out of slideshow view because this is the view that's going to show you what the presentation is going to look like when you're presenting it to an audience. If you want to come out of here, you can simply press the escape key, and I'm going to switch back to normal view. Now we have some other buttons in the top right hand corner, for example, record, present in Teams, comments and share. And of course, we're going to get to all of these a bit later on in the course. The final thing to mention is that when you click on the File tab, this takes you to what we refer to as the backstage area. And we've already been in and out of here a fair bit so far. This is where you're going to find some of the more admin related tools. So this is where we come to create new documents, to open documents, to save, print, export, close, all of that kind of stuff. You'll also find all of your options in here as well, right at the bottom. And this is a huge area that contains all of your individual settings for your copy of PowerPoint. And of course, you can customize this to suit your needs. But in general, most of the default options work best. So that's a quick guided tour of the PowerPoint interface for anybody who wasn't familiar. Let's move on to the next lesson. In the last lesson, I mentioned the Quick Access Toolbar. This is an area that we can customize and add commands from any ribbon. We can even add commands that are not on any ribbon, because there are many commands that still exist in PowerPoint but aren't necessarily assigned to a ribbon. So in this lesson, I'm just going to walk you through the process of customizing this because it's a really great efficiency tip so that you don't have to hunt through the ribbons looking for what you need. Now, there are a few different ways that you can customize this little toolbar. If you know the command that you want to add to it and you can see it on the ribbon, for example, maybe I'm always adding in shapes on the insert ribbon, I can simply right-click on the command and notice the first option is Add to Quick Access Toolbar. So as soon as I do that, I can now see it here. So if I want to add a shape, I can click the drop down and choose my shape. So I can basically do that for anything. I can right click on text box and add to Quick Access Toolbar. I can right click on icons and add to Quick Access Toolbar. So if I can see it, I can right click. The second way that we can add commands to our Quick Access Toolbar is to click this little drop down at the end that says Customize. Now what you'll see above this line are 15 or so commands that Microsoft have deemed most useful. So you can quickly toggle these on and add them to your Quick Access Toolbar. Now you'll notice the ones with ticks next to them, those are the ones that are currently already on there, but I could add any of these others. For example, I could add Quick Print. I could go back in and I can add New, so nice and simple. Now if I want to add anything else, maybe a command that I can't see on any of the ribbons, this is when I would need to click the drop down and go to More Commands. Now this is going to jump me to my PowerPoint options. We briefly came into here in the last lesson, and it's jumped me straight to the Quick Access Toolbar section. Now what you'll see in here is on the right hand side, this is showing what I currently have on my quick access toolbar. And then on the left hand side, this is showing me a list of commands based on the category I've selected above. So currently I have popular commands selected. But what I could do is click the drop down and I could choose a specific tab. It's going to show me everything on the File tab. Or I could go to All Commands, which is going to show me a huge long list of every single command in PowerPoint. And fortunately, these are ordered alphabetically, which makes it a little bit easier to find what we're looking for. So if I scroll down, maybe I decide that I want to add this command just here, Add Section. I can select it and then click on the Add button in the middle to move that across to my quick access toolbar. Similarly, if I decide that I don't want a command on there, for example, maybe I want to get rid of Quick Print, I can select it and click on Remove. I can also reorder my quick access toolbar commands by using these up and down arrows. So maybe I want to move Redo next to Undo. Let's select Redo and click on Up. Maybe I want to move Add Section up to here as well. Maybe I want to move Shapes down to here, so I can rearrange and get this to look exactly as I want it to look. Another thing that I can do to add a little bit of structure to this quick access toolbar is add in separators. So if I scroll all the way up to the top, notice we have separator just here. Now you're going to find separator at the top of any category that you select. So if I select popular commands, right at the top we have separator. So I can add as many separators as I like. So let's add in a couple. So I'm going to add 1, 2, and then I can move these into position. So maybe I want one separator just here, and then I'm going to have the other separator just here. And I think I'm going to move New File up to this section. So now I've kind of organized my commands into groups of similar type. Once I'm happy with how everything looks, I can click on OK and I can see those changes applied. So now if you look at my quick access toolbar, can you see those very faint lines separating the group? It just makes it a bit more organized and a bit more structured. And if I want to remove any of these commands, I can do it directly from here by right-clicking on the command and choosing Remove from Quick Access Toolbar. The final thing you need to know about this toolbar is that we can change its location. So my preference is to have this toolbar showing underneath the ribbons, but some people prefer to have this showing above the ribbons up in the top corner. So if we click the drop down, notice we have a Show Above Ribbon option, and that's going to move it up here in this title bar area. Now if I have mine up here, I tend to forget it's there, so I always like to show it below the ribbon. You can even turn it off entirely, so if you don't like it, you don't use it, you can hide the quick access toolbar. If you want to get it back, you need to go all the way over to this little drop down arrow at the end of the ribbons and choose Show Quick Access Toolbar, and that's going to bring it back. So at this stage of the course, I wouldn't expect you to start adding things to your quick access toolbar because you don't know what's going to be most useful to you yet. But as we go through, if we do click on commands that you think you're going to use all the time, it's definitely worth adding them in as you go. One of the biggest time savers when you're working in PowerPoint and any Microsoft application for that matter are keyboard shortcuts. Keyboard shortcuts allow us to keep our fingers on the keyboard as opposed to constantly reaching for the mouse to execute commands. And a lot of people love their keyboard shortcuts. Now, there are hundreds and hundreds of keyboard shortcuts in PowerPoint, and there is absolutely no way that you're going to memorize all of them. So most people generally have 10 to 15 that they know off the top of their head, and they use those all the time. You might even be familiar with some keyboard shortcuts if you've used other Microsoft applications. And the good news is that they are pretty consistent across applications. For example, if you know what the keyboard shortcut is for cut, copy and paste in Excel, you'll find it's exactly the same in PowerPoint. If I was to select this title text just here and go to the Home tab. In the Clipboard group, this is where we have our cut, copy and paste options. And if I hover over the pair of scissors for cut, you can see the keyboard shortcut Control X. If I hover over copy, you can see the keyboard shortcut of Control C. So these are exactly the same in every single application. Now, of course, there are some differences because PowerPoint has different commands to other applications as you start working with your slides. Now, I'm not going to go through all of the shortcuts, but I am going to show you some useful tips and tricks for finding out what shortcuts you have access to and where you can access them. Now, as we just saw, if we hover our mouse over some of these commands on the ribbon, you're going to see the keyboard shortcut in brackets in the screen tip. That's what we call these little pop-up boxes of information. They're called screen tips. So if I wanted to insert a new slide, I could simply press Control M and it's going to give me a brand new slide. Again, you can see the placeholders that we have here, one for the title and one for the content of the slide. Now, you don't see the keyboard shortcut in the screen tip for a lot of these commands on the ribbons. But what you can do is if you press Alt on your keyboard, notice what happens to all of our ribbons. They now get numbers and letters assigned so we can navigate entirely using our keyboard. So if I wanted to insert another new slide, I'd need to go to the Home tab by pressing H. Notice under the New Slide command, we have I, so let's press that, and then I can use my up and down arrows to select the slide that I want. So I'm going to select blank, hit enter, and I've now added a new slide without touching my mouse at all. So this Alt key reveals key tips, and we can use them to access commands and ribbons directly from our keyboard. Now we can press escape to come out of there, because another way that we can find out a big long list of all of the keyboard shortcuts available in PowerPoint is to jump into the help files. Now, if you have a help menu up here like I do, you can click on help. Alternatively, if you press F1, it's going to open up help in a pane on the right hand side. So at the top here, I could type in PowerPoint keyboard shortcuts and hit enter. And when we hit enter, that's exactly what we're going to get underneath. So it says, here's a list of common shortcuts in PowerPoint. So we can see to create a new slide, Control M, to save the file, Control S, undo, Control Z, so on and so forth. So these are the most common that you can see here. And then we have other categories that we can choose for other keyboard shortcuts. So don't forget about those help files. And the final, and may I say, very modern way of finding out more information about keyboard shortcuts is to utilize Copilot for Bing. Now, currently, Microsoft Copilot isn't available within the applications to anyone other than very large organizations. We're talking organizations of more than 300 people with 300 licenses. That version of Copilot is available when you open up PowerPoint, and it's really contextual to whatever it is that you're doing. And it's an awesome tool if your organization has it. Now, for most of us, myself included, because I don't work at an organization, I don't have access to the in-application version of Copilot. But we do have access to Copilot for Bing. So when I open up Copilot for Bing, it's going to open up in a pane on the right-hand side. And if you've ever used something like ChatGPT, this works in a very similar way. We simply give it a prompt and then it spits out an answer. Please show me a list of keyboard shortcuts in PowerPoint. Let's send that through and see what it comes up with. And here we go. You can see it's giving me Control N, Control M, Control B, Control T, so on and so forth. Now, I'm not sure how many it's going to give me here, whether it's going to give me all of them or just a selection of the most popular, but this is a really nice quick way of finding out what those shortcuts are. And then, of course, with Copilot, I'm just going to click on Stop Responding here. Underneath, we can just do copy, and then we could paste that into a Word document, print it out, and have it next to us. So don't forget about that option as well. So that's how you can find keyboard shortcuts when you're working in PowerPoint and some additional resources that you have access to. It's time now to do exercise 4. And in this exercise, we're going to practice some of the skills that we've learned in this section of the course. So the first thing I'd like you to do is just open up PowerPoint, and I'd like you to be able to identify where the following interface elements are located: the status bar, the ribbons, the backstage area, and the quick access toolbar. I'd then like you to add 3 commands of your choice to the quick access toolbar. And if you'd prefer the quick access toolbar to be above the ribbon, I'd like you to change the position. That's all I need you to do. If you'd like to see my answer, then please keep watching. So the first thing I asked you to do here was to be able to identify where specific elements are on the PowerPoint interface. Now, the first thing I asked you to identify is where the status bar is located. It's this small bar that runs across the bottom. And what we have on here are different pieces of useful information. Remember, you can customize what you see in this status bar by right-clicking your mouse and selecting what you want to see. The status bar also houses a quick way to get to our notes and a quick way to switch between different views and zoom in and out of our presentation. The next element I asked you to identify were the ribbons. Now, this is a fairly easy one. Our ribbons are right at the top here where we have these tabs: Home, Insert, Draw, Design. And the ribbons are what contain all of our commands and command groups. Next, I asked you to identify the backstage area. Now, the backstage area is what we find underneath the File menu. So File essentially isn't a ribbon, it's what we call backstage. And this is where you're going to find more of the admin-y tasks. So it's where we come to create new documents, open documents, save, print, export, things like that. So just be aware that that is what this area is called. And then finally, I asked you to identify the quick access toolbar. And that is this little toolbar that you can see just here underneath the ribbons. Now, this leads us on quite nicely to the second part of the exercise, which is to add 3 commands of our choice onto the quick access toolbar. And remember, there are a few different methods that you can use. When you find a command on a ribbon that you want to add, you can simply right-click on that command and choose Add to the quick access toolbar. If you can't see the command you need to add on any of the ribbons, you can click the drop down just here, go to More Commands, and it's going to jump you across to your PowerPoint options. And from here, we can choose commands from one of these menus. So if I go to All Commands, that's going to show every command that's available in PowerPoint. And then I can select whatever it is that I want to add, let's say 3D rotation, click on the Add button to add that across. So I can carry on doing that, click on OK, and I've completely customized my quick access toolbar. And the final thing I asked you to do in this exercise, and this was only if you want to do it, you can change the position of the quick access toolbar. So maybe instead of having it located underneath the ribbons, you want to show it above the ribbons instead. So to do that, again, we click this little drop down arrow and we have a Show Above Ribbon option. That's all I needed you to do. I hope you got an okay with that, and I will see you in the next section. Every time you create a new blank presentation in PowerPoint, it comes with a set of inbuilt preset placeholder slides. And we refer to these placeholder slides as slide layouts. Now, the default when you create a new presentation is this slide here. You're going to see one slide in your PowerPoint presentation, and this in general will be a title slide. You can see here I have some placeholders on this slide, which makes it really easy for me to add in text. I can simply click to add the title and then click to add a subtitle. Now, if we go up to the Home ribbon and click the New Slide drop-down, there are the 9 different slide layouts that I could select. So if I wanted to insert a new slide, maybe to add some content, I can choose one of these slide layouts. So I'm going to add this slide just here, a To Content slide. It's going to create a new slide for me with different placeholders. So again, this just makes it really simple for me to add text and content quickly. So I can click up here in the title area and I can add the title for this slide. If I want to add content in the 2 placeholders below, I can simply click in these placeholders and start to type in my content. Now notice also in the middle here we have all of these different icons. So this really accounts for the different types of content that I could enter into this placeholder. So I don't necessarily just have to add bulleted text. I could add any of these pieces of content. Maybe I want to add a stock image into this placeholder, or upload my own image, or maybe an icon or a table. So there are different types of content that we can easily add into these placeholders. Now in this particular lesson, we're just going to start with a bulleted list. So I'm going to add in a marketing project update. And of course, if I want to move across to the other placeholder, I simply need to click to add my text. And then when I click away, I can see exactly how my slide is going to look. And remember, at any point, if you want to see what your presentation is going to look like to your audience, you can simply go down to your status bar and choose the slideshow icon just here. Or alternatively, you can go up to the slideshow ribbon and choose from current slide if you just want to view this slide. So this is what it's going to look like to my audience. Escape to come out. Now let's click back on slide 1. Now currently I don't have any information in these placeholders, so let's add a title for our presentation. Now what about if I have a slide layout selected and I decide that I want to change it? And as a side note, if you ever want to know what slide layout is in use for any particular slide in your presentation, make sure you have the slide selected in the organizer on the left, go to the Home tab and click the Layout drop-down. Whichever slide layout you can see highlighted in grey, and you can see for me that is the title slide, that's the one that's currently applied. So if I want to change the layout here, I can simply select another layout from this selection of 9. So maybe instead of title and subtitle, I just want to display the title on this first slide. All I need to do is choose the title only layout, and you can see that it changes that slide title. Now notice as I've done that, I've got this little designer pane open up on the right hand side. And this is part of PowerPoint's AI tools. Now we're not going to use this at the moment, but we are going to come back to this a bit later on. So I'm simply going to click the cross to close that pane down for the time being. The important takeaway here is how you can add new slides with different layouts and how you can change current slides by switching the layout. Always remember that if you need to add just a blank slide that doesn't contain any placeholders, just click the new slide drop down and click on blank. Now notice here it's inserted the blank in between these two slides, so you have to be quite careful where you're clicked when you add a new slide. Because I was clicked on slide 1 when I inserted the new slide, it's going to insert it directly after. So if I didn't want that there, I'm just going to delete it out. I would need to make sure I have slide 2 selected. Then when I insert a blank, it's going to put it at the end. The slides pane that you see on the left-hand side here is a great place to come to organize your slides. As you build up your presentation, you're going to get more and more slide thumbnails showing in here, and we need to know how to manage those. Because we're probably going to want to add new slides, remove new slides, duplicate slides, and even rearrange slides. And we can do all of that from within this slide organizer area. Now in the last lesson, we saw how to add a new slide. We click the new slide drop down and then we can choose a slide layout. And I mentioned that where you're currently clicked in this organizer makes a real difference when it comes to where you're inserting your slides. So remember that as we go forward. Now, if we want to remove a slide, this is as simple as you might think it is. We can simply select the slide. So I'm going to select this blank slide and we can just press the delete key on our keyboard. That's going to get rid of it. Now, what about if I want to duplicate or copy a slide? So let's say that I want to make a copy of slide number 2. And we would make a copy of a slide to make ourselves more efficient. Sometimes if you already have a slide that has the layout and maybe the imagery that you want to use throughout the presentation, it's easier to simply duplicate the slide than go back in, create a new slide and re-add the content. So it's very simple to duplicate a slide, and there are a couple of different methods you can use. Now you can copy and paste slides. So if I select slide 2, I can press Ctrl C, which is the keyboard shortcut to copy. I can click underneath and then press Ctrl V to paste that slide. And essentially I have a copy of slide 2. I'm going to delete that out because the quicker way and the method that I use more often is to simply duplicate the slide. This time we only need one keyboard shortcut as opposed to two. And the keyboard shortcut to duplicate is Control D. And we're going to get an exact duplicate of that slide. I could duplicate multiple slides. So I need to select both slides. I'm going to hold down Shift to select slide 1, and then if I press Control D, I'm going to get a copy of both of those slides. Now let's say that on this slide here, slide number 3, I currently have the title only layout applied to slide 3. Now, what if I'm editing this slide and I move this placeholder? So maybe I think I want this in the middle somewhere down here. Now I can do that, we can move placeholders around, that's not a problem. But what if we make a whole bunch of changes and then we decide, actually, you know what, I want to reset this back to its original layout? Well, fortunately, we have a button that's going to allow us to do this. So if you've made loads of changes to the slides and you just want to reset to the default layout, which is title only in this case, if we go to the Home tab, the Slides group, we have a reset button. And you can see it says reset the position, size and formatting of the slide placeholders to their default settings. So when I click on reset, it's going to move that placeholder back to where it should be for a title slide layout. So just remember that button because it can be quite useful if you find yourself needing to backtrack and reset. Now, the final thing I'm going to talk to you about in this particular lesson is rearranging slides, because quite often we will start adding slides into our presentation and we'll decide that they maybe need to go in a completely different order. Well, this is really simple. We can do this via drag and drop in this slides pane. So maybe I decide that I want these two marketing strategy slides together. I can simply click on slide 3 and I can drag it upwards. And notice a space is made and I can let go of my mouse. I could do the same here. I could drag slide 3 underneath slide 4. I can drag multiple. I just need to select them. So let's select the first slide, hold down Shift, select the second, and then I can drag both and drop them where I need them to be. Now it's worth noting that many of the options that I've shown you just here are also available on the ribbons and in the right-click menu. If I right-click on any slide, you can see some of the commands that we've used in this lesson. For example, duplicate slide. So if you can't remember that the keyboard shortcut is Control D, you have the option in the right-click menu. We have delete slide in here as well, and we can even change the layout from here if we want to. Also, on the ribbon, on the Home ribbon, specifically in the Clipboard group, this is where we have our cut, copy and paste options. And of course, we have our new slide drop-down. So far in this course, we've seen how to create a basic presentation and apply slide layouts. So now it's time to liven up our presentations a little bit and start adding color and images. So I've gone in and I've created a brand new presentation for Hummingbird Designs. Slide number 1 is just using a title slide layout, and then I have 2 blank slides after it. Now, we haven't added any kind of theme to our presentation as yet, which is why it looks kind of boring and we just have a plain white background. If we go to the Design tab and click the drop down just here, you can see different slide designs that we could apply to this presentation. Now, whilst some of these are really nice, maybe we want something completely different. For example, maybe I just want a gradient background in very specific branded colors. So if we click away, instead of choosing a theme, we can go over to the Customize group and we have a Format Background button. And this is going to open up a pane on the right-hand side and allow us to really customize exactly what our background looks like. And if we do this, it means that we can change the design slightly for every single slide. So if you want slides that are different colors, then you can format the background and do that. Now I want to apply this background to all 3 of my slides in this presentation. So I'm going to hold down Shift and that's going to select all 3. So any changes I make over here are going to apply to all of my slides. Now in this fill group, we can choose to fill the background with a solid fill. So that's just simply one flat color. If we click the little color drop down, it opens up a palette that's made up of our theme colors, and this is the default Office theme that's in use when you create a new PowerPoint presentation. We can choose one of the standard colors, or we can go to more colors if we want something else. So let's start out simply by applying one of these theme colors. I'm going to go for this light purple, And you can see that that applies to all of the slides. Also notice we have a transparency slider just here. So if I want to make this more transparent, I can drag this slider up and I'm getting a lighter pink and it goes all the way through to white. And if you forget to select all of your slides when you're formatting the background, and you just apply the formatting to the first slide, for example, we also have an Apply to All button at the bottom, which is going to copy that formatting down. Now notice that we can also fill the background with a gradient fill. So if I select this option, it opens up more customizations below. So we have some preset gradients. So this is really just changing the way that the gradient looks. We can choose a gradient type, so these are all slightly different. If you click on radial, you can see it kind of changes the way that that gradient looks. I'm going to leave mine on linear. We can choose the direction, so which direction do we want this gradient to flow in? Now I want mine from the bottom up. We can choose the angle if we want to, and then we can specify what colors we want to use in our gradient. And notice here we have what we call gradient stops. And if we move these around, you can see it changes the intensity and the position of these gradient colors. And we can modify the color of each one of these gradient stops. We could even drag gradient stops off of this toolbar if we have too many. So maybe I just want two. I could drag this one off and I could drag this one off. And now I just have two gradient stops that I can adjust. If I want to add another one, I can click on the Add Gradient Stop and that's going to add it in the middle. So I'm going to have three colors in my gradient and I'm going to position them like that. Now, in order to get a really nice looking gradient, I'm going to go back to that website that I showed you at the beginning of the course, coolers.co. Remember, this is a website that we can go to search for color palettes that work well together. So I'm going to go to Tools and we're going to explore palettes. Now, if I scroll through some of these palettes, I'm going to choose something to use in my presentation. And I think I'm going to go for, let's go for this one just here. Now, notice as we hover our mouse over each of the colors, it shows us the hexadecimal value. So if I want to use this red in my gradient, I can simply click to select the hexadecimal value, jump back to PowerPoint, and maybe I want this gradient stop to be in that red color. So I need to select it, click on color, and go to more colors. And this is where I can paste in the hexadecimal value, Control V. Click on OK, and it's going to add that red in. Let's grab this color just here, the greeny color. Let's click. And this time I'm going to add that to the middle gradient stop. So let's select it, click the drop down, more colors, and then we can simply Control V to paste in that hex code. Click on OK. Let's do the final one. I'm going to go back to my palette, and this time we're going to use this cream color, click to copy, back to PowerPoint, select the final gradient stop, more colors, and Control V to paste in the hex code. So now you can see what that looks like, and we can adjust these. So if we want more red, we can bring that up. If we maybe want more of the green, we can bring that down. And we can also click on these specific gradient stops and change the transparency. So maybe that red's a bit too intense. I can make it a little bit more transparent. So a really nice way of adding a consistent color theme into your presentations. And remember, Apply to All will apply this to all of your slides if you forgot to select all of them before you started formatting. Now, the final option I'm going to show you here is how to use a picture as a background. So let's go back to the Home tab, and I'm just going to insert a new blank slide. We still have the Format Background pane open, but this time we're going to say Picture or Texture Fill. Now, it will always fill it initially with the first texture that it finds in the list. And for me, that is this one just here. We have a list of textures that we can apply from this little drop down. I generally don't tend to use these because I find them a bit busy and also a little bit old school looking. But what I want to do is I want to insert a picture. So what we can do is go to Picture Source and click on Insert. I'm going to insert an image from a file, and I'm just going to go to my Downloads folder and insert an image that I've got saved off from my PC. And all of these images you see here are from that website that I showed you, pexels.com. Let's click on Insert. And there we go. We now have an image as a background. Now you might be thinking to yourself, well, that's fine, but if I put some text on top of this, it's going to be a bit hard to read. So in the next lesson, I'm going to show you a little technique that I like to use whenever I'm using a reasonably busy image in the background so that the text can still be seen. So if you're ready, let's jump across there now. We finished out the previous lesson by adding an image as our slide background. And I mentioned that if you have an image in the background of your slide and you want to add text over the top, sometimes it can be really hard to read the text depending on the image that you're using. For example, with this slide here, slide number 4, we have this image in the background. Now currently this is a blank layout slide. So I'm going to change the layout. Let's go to layout and I'm going to say that I want a title on this slide. So let's choose title only. And now I get my placeholder. If I add a title in here, so let's say this one is called Meet the Team, and maybe I decide I want to move this down, that's really hard to read. Even if I make this title bigger, so I'm going to go to the Home tab, the font group, and I'm just going to increase this font size to make this a lot bigger than it currently is, it's slightly better, but it's still kind of obscured. The M is in the black part of the background and it just doesn't look particularly good or professional. So how can we get around this? Well, let's delete out that title for 1 second and I'm just going to reapply the blank layout. Now what we could do here is add what I like to call a transparent overlay. And this involves simply adding a shape over the top and changing the fill color. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, well, if we add a shape over the top of an image, we're not going to be able to see the image. But remember, we can adjust the transparency. So what I'm going to do first of all is let's zoom out a little bit. In the bottom right-hand corner, notice we have this little zoom slider. So I can drag this down to zoom out of this slide so I can see it a little bit better. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to jump up to the Insert tab and we're going to insert a shape. Now, we haven't spoken about shapes yet in this course. We have quite a few lessons on shapes a bit later on, but this will give you a little sneak preview. If you want to insert a shape into your presentation, you just need to jump across to the illustrations group and click the lower half of the shapes button to expose the shapes gallery. And we have all of our shapes that we can use in here divided down into different categories. Now, I want to use a rectangle. So let's go down to the rectangle section and select this one. Now, as soon as you select a shape, your cursor is going to change to a crosshair. Can you see that? I'm hovering over a light part of the image. And this just means we're now in draw mode and we can draw our shape. So I'm going to draw a shape that is exactly the same size as my slide. So I'm going to start in the top left-hand corner and let's click and let's drag it all the way out and let go. Now, by default, the shape is going to be filled with the default color from the theme that I'm using in PowerPoint. Now, if we go to the Design tab and click the drop down just here, the default for all new presentations is the standard Office theme, and this comes with its own theme colors. So that is what I'm seeing just here. Also note that when you add a shape, by default, it will insert with a shape outline. There's a very thin dark blue outline around the outside of that shape. Now I'm going to change that. Notice that when we're clicked on a shape, we get access to a contextual ribbon at the top called Shape Format. And we spoke about contextual ribbons right at the beginning of this course. They only appear when they're needed. So because I'm clicked on a shape, I can now see that Shape Format ribbon. Now in here, I can control the shape outline. So let's click the drop down and I want to say no outline just to remove that. Now I have my shape covering my image, but what I can do is I can change the transparency to show some of that image coming through. So to do this, we need to right click on the shape and go down to the Format Shape menu option. This is going to open up a pane on the right hand side and we can choose how we want to fill this shape. Now it might be that I want to use the same gradient fill that I used before, or it might be that I just want a solid fill. So let's use a solid fill. In this example, I'm going to click the drop down and I'm going to choose my color. Now I want to have white text on top of this background, so I'm going to go for a reasonably dark color. Let's go for something that's almost black. I'm going to go for this one just here. And then underneath, I can adjust the transparency. So can you see, as soon as I start moving that slider around, more of the image pokes through. So this is a really nice way of being able to use an image and having that effect in the background, but still being able to see any text that you put on top. So you can take this down to almost dark if you want and just having it peeking through a little bit. So I'm going to take mine down to 13%. And now I'm going to go back to home and I'm going to change the layout. Let's say title only. Now I want my title text to be white, so I'm going to click on the outside of this text box that this title placeholder is in, go to the Home tab, and I'm just going to change the font to white. And now I can add my title. And once again, I can increase the font size to make that a little bit bigger and easier to see, and I can move this around if I want to. So maybe I want to place it in the slide so that it looks something like that. So using a shape and adjusting that transparency is a really nice way of creating modern slides that allow you to use nice images in the background, but don't distract away from the information on the slide. AI has definitely been the buzzword of 2023. It feels like everybody is talking about AI and how we can use it to help us out when we're working with applications like Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. But did you know that PowerPoint has contained AI for a number of years? I'm guessing that you probably didn't. A lot of the things that we take for granted in PowerPoint are actually using AI. And I'm going to show you one of those features now, because this can be a really nice way of quickly applying a really cool looking slide design to a presentation. Now you can see here that we're working on a presentation called Hummingbird Designs. Now if I go to the Home tab, notice all the way over at the end here we have Designer, and it says open the Designer pane for instant slide makeovers. Now we did see this pop up automatically when we were working on slides in previous lessons, and you will see this pop up from time to time to help you out when it comes to slide design. But if you want to open it at any time, you can simply by clicking on Designer. Now notice it said generating design ideas. Now what's currently happening here is that PowerPoint, the AI element, is looking at the context of my presentation. So it's reading the words on the slide and it's found the word hummingbird. So look what it's presented to me, a bunch of slide ideas related to hummingbird. And you'll find this no matter what you have on your slide, the AI is going to go to work and produce a bunch of potential slide designs that you could use based on the wording and the topic of your presentation. So it is pretty cool. And check out some of these. I really like them. If we scroll down, we can see all of these different slide designs that it's generated. Right at the bottom, we could even see more if we wanted to, but if we want to apply any of these, we can simply select. So I really like this top one. Let's select it and it's going to apply it. If I go to the second slide, you can see it's not generating any ideas, and that is because this is just a blank slide. We don't have anything on the slide, so it doesn't know what I want to produce. And you will find that it doesn't work with all slides. It depends if you have text on the slide or not. And if you want to go in and switch this to something else, you can simply open up the Designer again and choose another design from this little pane. So just be aware of this little Designer tool, because you will see this pop up from time to time, and we're going to see it pop up as we start to add more elements into our presentation. So far in this course, we've discussed that when we add a new slide, it comes with default placeholders and a slide layout. Now, occasionally there will be things that you want to add to every single slide. For example, maybe you want to add your company logo into the bottom corner. And if you have that company logo saved off as a JPG or a PNG file, it is a little bit of a pain to have to go into each and every slide, go up to insert and insert the picture from your device. What would be much better is that every time we insert a new slide, the logo is automatically applied to the bottom. Similarly, if I decide that I want a different font for all of my slides other than the one that's currently in this template, which is Aptos Display, it is a bit of a pain to have to go into every single slide, selecting the text and changing the font. Again, it would be much better to change it once, and then every time we add a new slide, we get that new font. Now we can do this using the Slide Master. And in my experience when working with PowerPoint and teaching people how to use PowerPoint, this seems to be something which people struggle with a little bit. It's actually pretty logical, so let's work our way through it so you understand exactly how it works. Now, the slide master is basically similar to a master template. Any changes we make to the slide master will appear on every single slide. But there is a bit of a caveat to that, in that we can automatically apply to different slide layouts. Now, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Let's first bring up the slide master. Now, to find the slide master, you need to go to the View tab. And in the Master Views group, this is where you'll find your slide master. Now, if we take a look at our slide master, I think this is where people then tend to get pretty confused. Because what are all of these different slides in our slide organizer? Well, the one at the top here, this is what we call the master slide. It's like the root slide for everything else. So any changes that we make to this root slide are going to show on every single slide that we add. Now, underneath this root slide, we then have all of the different slide layouts that we could possibly create. For example, this is the title slide. This is a title and content slide. We have down here our blank slide. So all you're seeing underneath the root are all of the different slide layouts. And the way that this works is that if I want to have certain things applied to certain slide layouts, I would just change the relevant slide layout in here. So for example, if I wanted my company logo on every single slide in the presentation, and when I create new slides, I would add it to this top root one just here. If I only wanted my company logo every time I create a title slide, I would add it to the master title slide just here. So that's the difference between these. Another thing to note is that when you select one of these slides in the organizer, can you see here it says title slide layout used by slides 1. So it tells you how many slides you have this specific layout applied to in your current presentation. And that can be pretty useful sometimes. Now, let's say that I want to change the font across my entire presentation. For this, I'm going to go up to the master title slide to do it because I want it on every slide. And all I would need to do here is select the title style placeholder, go to the Home tab, and then I can change the font. So instead of Aptos, maybe I want, let's just go for something like Arial. I could even make this bold if I wanted to. And I'm going to click on the placeholder underneath, and I'm going to make that Arial as well. But for this one, I'm not going to make it bold. Now notice that if you take a look at these other layouts now, that change has been made to every single master slide. So it doesn't matter which layout we apply to our presentation, that title placeholder is always going to be in bold and the overall text is going to be Arial. So now let's say that we want to add our company logo, but we only want to add the company logo when we choose a blank slide layout. So instead of modifying the root master slide up here, I'm going to scroll down to find that blank layout. And you can see here it's saying that it's used by slides 2 to 3. So I'm going to select this blank master. I could simply insert the image of my logo, or I could insert a placeholder. And you can see we have lots of different types of content placeholders. Now I'm just going to insert the image. I have my logo saved off to my PC, and you'll find this logo in the course files folder if you'd like to follow along. So let's go to the pictures drop down. I'm going to choose this device. There is my company logo. Let's select it and click on Insert. Now this logo actually does have hummingbird designs, but it's in white because I've got a dark slide layout, and this will show up once we close the slide master. Now, once you have your image in here, I can resize this. So I want to make this quite a bit smaller and then position it where I want it to appear. So I want to have my logo in the bottom left-hand corner. Now remember, we've only applied this to the blank layout template. So when we close the master view, what we should find is that where we have a blank layout in use, which is slides 2 and 3, we can see the company logo in the bottom right-hand corner. It's also worth noting that for every slide in our presentation, the text has been changed to Arial because we modified that root slide. If I click in the text, you can see Arial just here. And what we should find is that if we were to add a new slide and we were to use the blank template, it's going to add the new slide with the logo on the bottom. Now notice it hasn't added the gradient fill background, and that's because I didn't apply this gradient fill to the slide master. If I wanted every slide that I create to have this same colored background, I would need to format the background in the slide master. But that's the concept of how slide masters work. There are many other things we can add into slide masters. For example, we can add in things like headers and footers. You can see we have footer placeholders. But the general rule here is that if you want to make changes to multiple slides, and you want those changes to apply going forward, change the slide master instead of trying to manually change every single slide. So far in this course, we've mainly been dealing with slide layouts that contain preset placeholders, and we've simply been adding in text to those placeholders. But you can also define your own placeholders essentially by adding in text boxes. And text boxes allow us to place text anywhere on the slide. We're not just limited to wherever the placeholder is of the layout that we've selected. Now notice here that I've added another slide to this presentation, slide number 4. And if we check out the layout that I applied, it's just a simple 2-content layout. Now if we click on this first placeholder, this is essentially just a text box. And text boxes can be changed and modified to suit our own needs. So you can see here that this text box is currently pretty large. I have a lot of white space at the bottom. So what we can simply do here is resize that text box and make it more economical. So notice at the bottom we have these little circles. These are little handles that we can click on and drag upwards to reduce the amount of space. And I can do the same with the text box on the right hand side. I can click and I can drag this up. Now the reason why we might want to do that is because if I was to add maybe an image or an icon or something else onto this slide, if I have a text box that's this big and I want to put an image underneath here, it then makes it quite difficult for me to select the image because this text box is effectively over the top. So I always like to reduce the size of the text box so that it exactly fits the text contained within. Now there's so many other things that you can do with text boxes, but those are quite hard to demonstrate when we have a slide with a white background. So let's switch to the slide before, the Meet the Team slide, where we have this darker background. And I'm going to duplicate this slide. Let's Control D to duplicate it. And I'm going to delete out the placeholder here so that we're just left with this background image. Now, if you want to insert a text box onto any slide, you can simply jump up to the Insert ribbon, and then over in the text group, we have a text box option just here. So let's select it, and then what happens is when we click, and I'm just going to click down here, we get our cursor surrounded by a small box, and we can simply start typing. So I'm going to type in, "We're ready to talk to you." Now, when we select the text box, notice that we have a shape format ribbon at the top here, because effectively a text box is considered to be a shape. I can move the text box around, and if I go to the Home tab, I can change any of these font properties to customize the way this text looks. So maybe I want to make this bigger. Let's make it 44 points. In fact, I think that's a bit too big. Let's go for 32. I could change the font color, so I'm going to make the font white. And what I could do to really make this stand out from the background, because it's kind of blending in a little bit, is go to the shape format ribbon and I could change the shape fill of that text box. So maybe I want to make this a darker color or maybe a blue or something like that. Now, another really cool little utility that we have in here is the Eyedropper tool. Notice down here we have Eyedropper. If I click this, my cursor changes to this little pipette. And what it allows me to do is hover over any part of the image in the background and pick up the color in use. So this is a great little tool if you're kind of trying to tie colors together within your slide. So if I hover over her top, this is kind of this dark green color, and click, it's going to apply that to the background of the text box. And then I can move this up to the top. I can make it wider if I wanted to, or I can make it narrower. I can use my alignment tool. So if I go to home, maybe I want this aligned to the middle like that. Now I actually like this on one line, so let's change that. And I can even add an outline around the outside of this text box. So once again, I'm going to go to outline. I'm going to choose a white outline, and I could change the weight of the outline as well. So currently we have quite a thin line, but I could make this quite a bit thicker if I wanted to. So let's take this up to 3 points. So very quickly there, we've been able to add a text box, add our text. We've used the Eyedropper utility to fill in the background color, and we've seen how we can add a border around the outside. Sections are a great way of adding a bit of structure and organization to our presentations. They're also really useful if we want to create custom slideshows. And we're going to talk a lot more about custom slideshows a bit later on in the course. For the time being, let's just focus on adding sections into a PowerPoint presentation. Now, in this example, I've simply loaded up a template. And this is a template that you can find under File and New. Now, the reason why I've used a template is because this contains lots and lots of different slides. And without sections in our presentation, our slides just run one after the other. So we have slide 1, slide 2, slide 3, slide 4, so on and so forth. These aren't grouped or categorized or sectioned off in any way at all. So let's go in and let's add some sections to give it a little bit of structure. Now, the first thing I'm going to do here is where we have slide 1, I want to add a section called Introduction. And maybe that's going to include slide 1 and slide 2, because these are the introduction slides. It's my title slide, and then I'm just talking a little bit about the company. Now, there are a few different ways that we can add sections into presentations. We can go up to the Home tab and we have a section tool just here, and we can choose Add Section. Alternatively, we can right-click on the slide, and we also have Add Section in that right-click menu. So if I click on Add Section, it's going to give me this little pop-up box, and I can give my section a name. So I'm going to call this Introduction. Let's click on Rename. And you can see it's added it at the top. Now I want to include both slide 1 and slide 2 in this section, so my next section is going to start from slide 3. And maybe slide 3 and slide 4 are related to issues. So I want another section in here called Issues. So I'm going to click on the first slide in the section. Let's right click, add section, and we're going to call this Issues. Rename. I'm going to go down to the next section. So I want this to start just here, and this is related to the products. So again, we're going to go to add section. This one is called Products, and rename. And I would carry on going through this presentation, adding in sections. So let's just add one more. We're going to name this company, so on and so forth. Pretty straightforward. So now that we have these sections, what can we do with them? Well, notice that each section has a little collapsible and expandable arrow next to it. So if I just want to work on the 2 slides under the Issues section, I could collapse up the other sections around it, which is going to allow me just to focus in on these 2 slides. Now, if I want to quickly expand everything out again, I don't have to go in and do it all individually. I can go to the section drop down and notice we have collapse all and expand all buttons. So if I click on expand all, it's going to expand all of those out again. Notice also under this drop down, we can remove a section or we can remove all sections. Another thing we can do is we can use these sections to reorganize our slides. So maybe I decide that both of these slides in the Issues section need to be underneath Products. So what I can do here is grab where it says Issues and drag it underneath. And how much easier is that? Because it collapses up all of the slides and I can see this a lot better to drag and drop. So it makes moving things around a lot easier as well. And also remember that if we right click on any of these section headings, we then have options in the right click menu as well. So again, we can rename from here, we can remove sections, or we can reorder by moving sections up or down. Now, I always really like to make sure that my PowerPoint presentation is in sections, because this feeds through to lots of other things in PowerPoint. For example, if we go to the Insert tab, we can insert something called a section zoom. Now, I'm not going to go into this at this stage of the course because it's a bit more advanced than we're currently at. But in order to use this, we need to have our presentation split up into sections. Also, if we want to create a custom slideshow, it helps to have our presentation in sections. And I'm going to show you why this is so useful when we get to those relevant topics. But for the time being, that is how you can very easily add sections into your presentation to give it some structure. Another really useful tip to know when you're working in a PowerPoint presentation is how to quickly find and replace fonts. So we're sticking with this presentation that I created based off of the template. And if we take a look at this presentation, you can see that we have different fonts in use here. So currently all of the titles on each of these slides are using this font just here, Posterama Headings. And if I take a look at the body font in use, it's using Avenir X LT Pro Light. Now, maybe my manager comes to me and says, you know what, I don't like these fonts. Can you change the font to something else across all of the slides? Now, if your first thought is to go into each slide, select the text box and then go up here and manually change it, that is going to take you an age to do, particularly if you have a lot of slides included in your presentation. There is a much better way to do this, and that is using the Find and Replace utility. So if we go up to the Home tab, all the way over in the Editing group, we have a Replace option. Now if we click the drop down, we have a very specific option in here to replace fonts in the presentation. So if we choose Replace Fonts, we can then go in, choose what we want to replace and what we want to replace it with. Now, the heading fonts that I want to change are using Posterama font style. So we're going to select that and then we can choose what we want to replace it with. And this time we get our full list of fonts. So I'm going to scroll down to, let's go for Fira Sans Black and click on Replace. And you can see that's exactly what it's done. If we close out of here and click in that title area and take a look at the font in use, it says Fira Sans Black. And it's applied that to every single placeholder that contains that font style. Now, if we go to the About Us page, where we have these little text boxes, these are using Avenir Next LT Pro. So we can pretty much use the same process to replace these fonts as well. So I'm going to go back to the Replace Fonts dialog box. This time we want to select Avenir Next LT Pro, and then we can choose what we want to replace it with. So let's just go for Barlow, click on Replace, and that font has changed. And if I check up on the home ribbon, you can see now in the font group it says Barlow. So Replace Fonts is a really amazing efficiency tool that's really going to quicken up the process of switching out fonts for other fonts in your presentation. When it comes to copying slides from one PowerPoint presentation to another, we have a couple of different methods that we can use. We can simply cut or copy and paste, or we can import slides from one presentation to another. So let's take a look at both methods. So I have open on the screen here two presentations, and you can see that I've displayed them side by side. Now, maybe I want to copy slides from the presentation on the right across to the presentation on the left. Now, as I mentioned, the first method we can use is cut or copy and paste. And we can use this method to copy across one or multiple slides. Now, the cut, copy and paste method requires you to have both presentations open. So let's drag out so we can see our thumbnails a little bit better. And I'm going to do the same in the other presentation. Because now what we can do is, let's say I want to grab this agenda slide. All I need to do is select it. I can press Ctrl+C to copy it, and then I just need to go to the point in the other presentation where I want to paste it. So let's say I want to paste it underneath slide 2. If I click under slide 2, I get this red line, and then I can simply do a Control V, which is going to do the default paste. Now, the default paste in this particular instance is to use the destination formatting. So notice here that as I've pasted this slide in, the formatting has changed very slightly from the original version. It looks like the font has changed, the alignment has changed, and also the colors in use. Now that's happened because I just did a Control V. It's doing the default paste. And if you notice underneath, we have this little tag with this drop down, and this shows us our paste options. Now the one that's highlighted in grey, that is Use Destination Theme, and that's the one that gets used when you just do Control V. So basically the slide has updated to match the settings and the theme in the new presentation. But we do have a couple of other options. The second one is to keep the source formatting. So check out what happens if I now choose this. You can see now it looks exactly the same as the original because I've pasted it and kept the original formatting. The final option we have in here is to paste as a picture. Now in this case I don't want to do that, but just be aware of the difference between these two options, Use Destination Theme and Keep Source Formatting. Now we can use cut, copy and paste to do exactly the same for multiple slides, and the process doesn't change. So all we would need to do is select multiple slides from our presentation, and then we can use the same method of copy and paste. Now I'm going to delete out that slide that we just copied in, because what we're going to do this time is we're going to close down the presentation on the right. Now if I'm working in this presentation here and I don't have the other file open, I might choose to use a different method if I want to import some slides. And this method means that I don't have to go in, find the file and reopen it in order to copy them across. What we can do is we can jump up to the Home tab, go to the Slides group and click on Reuse Slides. This is going to open a pane on the right hand side, and underneath you're going to see any presentations that you've opened and worked on recently. Alternatively, you can browse for the file that contains the slides that you want to import. Now we used this presentation recently, so it's sitting there underneath. Now notice it says choose content or open in PowerPoint. So I can simply open this presentation in PowerPoint from here, or if I want to insert specific slides into the pitch deck presentation that I have in the main window, I can say choose content. Now what this is going to do is it's going to show me all of the slides contained within that presentation. And I can then go through and select which ones I want to insert. Now notice by default we have Use Source Formatting selected. So if I want these slides to stay looking exactly as they are in the original, I would keep this box checked. If I wanted these slides to take on the formatting of the presentation that I'm pasting them into, I would deselect this box. Now I'm going to leave this unchecked because any slides I import, I want them to take on the look and feel of the current presentation. So let's just go through and let's insert a few slides. I'm going to say insert slide on agenda, let's insert introduction and also results from last year. So you can see how simple that is. Once you're done, you can close this pane down and then we can go in and we might find that we need to do a little bit of rearranging because we're not using the source formatting. We've updated it with this presentation's formatting and colors. But that's how simple it is. Two different methods to copy slides from one PowerPoint presentation to another. It's time now to do exercise 5. And in this exercise, we're going to practice some of the skills that we've learned in this section of the course. And this is really where the hard work starts. So the first thing I need you to do here is I want you to create a new presentation and I'd like you to build out a title slide. So we're going to do this from a blank presentation and I'd like you to apply the title slide layout. I'd like you to add the title text, Cool Beans Coffee Company, and add the subtitle text, Ethically Sourced, Always Delicious. I'd then like you to use Designer to apply a theme to the presentation. And you're going to see in a moment on the next slide the theme that I used. Now you could choose another theme, but if you want to follow along accurately with me, ensure that you pick the same theme. Now note there is an optional exercise in here. So if you want to practice modifying the slide master, download the coolbeanslogo.jpg from the exercise files folder and add it to the master. But it is worth noting that if you've applied a theme to your presentation using Designer, the logo is going to be hidden on all slides. So I've added that in there in case you just want to practice adding things to the master slides. You can do that. Just be aware that because we've used Designer to add our theme, we can't see any graphics we add to the master. And this is effectively what I'd like your slide to end up looking like. So we have our title, our subtitle, and we have our theme applied using Designer. See how you get on with that? If you'd like to see my answer, then please keep watching. So the first thing I asked you to do here was to create a new blank presentation, which we've done just here. And I wanted you to make sure that the first slide is a title slide. Now, I think this is, let's go to layout and just check. Yes, we have a title slide layout applied. I then asked you to add some title text. Cool Beans Coffee Company, and then some subtitle text. Ethically sourced, always delicious. Next, I asked you to use Designer to apply a theme to this presentation. So on the home ribbon, we're going to click on Designer. And what you might find in here is that you don't actually get the suggestion for the one that I've used in the example. Now, there's not a great deal that we can do about that because these are obviously AI generated. So they're going to be different every time you go into here. So what I would say to you is if you can't see the one that I use, then just pick something else that you think is pretty cool. So for example, I'm just going to go for this one just here. Now, if you do want to follow along exactly with me, what I would suggest you do is open up the Cool Beans Coffee Company completed presentation in the exercise files folder, grab the first slide and just copy and paste it into the new presentation. And make sure that you keep the source formatting when you do this. That will effectively bring across the template. And then when you're working exactly along with me. So either of those options is fine. You don't have to necessarily follow exactly the themes and styles that I'm using. Now, I gave you an optional exercise of modifying the master and adding a logo. Now, because we've used Designer, the logo won't actually show, but if you did want to practice that step, let me just run through with you how you would do that. So the logo for the Cool Beans Coffee Company is located in the exercise files folder. So we're going to go to the View tab. We're going to go to Slide Master. And if I want to add the logo onto every slide, I need to make sure I'm clicked on the root slide, the top slide up here, and then I can insert the graphic. So let's go to Insert, Pictures, this device. There is the logo. Let's click to select and click on Insert. So now we can simply resize this and we can place it wherever we want. So I'm going to put mine all the way over here. And notice that that is now on every single slide. Let's close the master view. As I said, we can't see the logo because we're using Designer, but that is how you would modify the slide master. That is all I need you to do in this exercise. I will see you in the next section. It's time now to shift our focus and really start to jazz up our presentation by adding some visual elements. And we're going to start in this first lesson by adding pictures to our slides. Now, just to get you up to speed, I've created a brand new presentation, and we're going to be using this presentation throughout the balance of this course. And currently in this presentation, I have 2 slides. And I've built these slides using techniques that we've already seen demonstrated in previous lessons. So just a quick recap, on this first slide here, this is a combination of a gradient filled background, some text boxes, and I've just inserted my company logo and some shapes. Now, we haven't spoken much about shapes, but everything else we've already seen demonstrated. And I've added this background and the logo into the slide master so that whenever I create a new slide, it's created with the correct background, with the logo, and with the correct fonts. Now, what we want to do on slide 2 is we want to have a really nice meet the team slide. And maybe I want to introduce the 3 managers or the 3 heads of department to my audience. Now, if you want to insert images into your presentation, you need to go to the Insert tab, and then we have an images group here where we can insert pictures. And notice that we can choose the source of our pictures. So if we click on online pictures, this is going to open up a window that's going to allow us to add a keyword into this search field at the top, and then it's going to go away and search the internet for everything that matches. So if I was to type in, let's just go for beach and hit enter, these are all the images it's found online of beaches that have a Creative Commons only license. Now, even when an image does have a Creative Commons only license, if you want to use that image in your presentation and the presentation is going to be used for commercial purposes, you still need to check the copyright on the individual image, even if it comes up as Creative Commons only. So just bear that in mind. In general, when I want to use images in a PowerPoint presentation, I tend to stay away from online pictures and instead make sure I've already downloaded pictures from a royalty-free image source such as Pexels or Unsplash. But just be aware that this option is there. You can insert pictures from online. We can also search the stock image library. So this is PowerPoint's inbuilt gallery of stock images. We can do exactly the same thing up here. Let's be consistent and just type in beach. And again, it's going to return a bunch of stock images for use. Now, the third method we can use as our source is our mobile device. So most of us are used to taking pictures on our phones these days. So we now have a way that we can very quickly import photos from our phone into PowerPoint. Now, this is a fairly recent addition to PowerPoint 365. And currently, if we click this, you'll see that it's only available for Android users only. So if you have an iOS device like I do, then unfortunately you are out of luck. But if you do have an Android device, you can scan the QR code to get started. Now, the final option we have in here is to upload photos from this device. So that means pictures that you have stored on your PC. And this is what we're going to do to finish off this lesson. I've downloaded 3 photographs of people from pexels.com, and we're just going to upload those into our PowerPoint presentation. And this will set us up nicely for the next few lessons. So let's click on this device. I want to add this picture, this one, and this one. Let's insert them in. Now, notice what happens as soon as those pictures are added to the slide. Did you see the designer automatically popped open on the right-hand side? So it's recognized that I've added content to this slide, and now it's giving me a choice of really nice designs that I might possibly want to use. And you can see some of these actually look really, really great. So this really helps you organize your imagery and your text into nice layouts. This one's pretty cool down here. You simply need to click on it to insert it. And it takes a lot of the hard work out of designing your own slides. Now, I don't want to use this. I'm going to undo to go back to how we were, and I'm simply going to close down the designer. Because now that we have our images in here, I want to resize them. Now we can do that by dragging the handles in to make them a little bit smaller. Now notice as I'm dragging the handles, I don't know whether you can see every now and again, we get these red dashed lines pop up on the screen. And these are alignment guides. You can see here, if I drag that up or down a little bit, you can see we get that red dashed line. And these are called smart guides, and they're there to help us with alignment. Now, I'm going to be talking a lot more about these when we get on to the relevant lesson about alignment. But if you're wondering what they are, that is what they do. So I'm going to roughly resize these, and I'm just going to move them next to each other. So if I drag that in, you can see as I'm doing this, those guides are really helping me, so I know that those are exactly the same height. Now, when you have images in your presentation, notice that when you're clicked on any of the images, we get a picture format ribbon at the top. This is one of those contextual menus that disappears when we're not clicked on it and reappears when we are. And on the picture format ribbon, this is where we have all of our tools for customizing our pictures. For example, if I wanted to add a border around the outside of this picture, I could go up to picture border. I can choose the color of my border. Let's make it a light gray. And I can also choose the weight. So maybe I want to make it pretty thick just to add that border. We have picture effects such as shadow, reflection, glow around the outside. So I could put a nice green glow. Let's make it a bit bigger so you can see it. In fact, let's do a blue glow like that. I can change the picture layout if I wanted to, or I could add a picture style. And you can see what each of these look like in the live preview when I hover over them. So lots of different options when it comes to formatting your actual pictures. Also in the adjust group, notice we have some correction utilities. So if we need to make the image sharper or softer, or if we need to change the brightness or the contrast, we have all of those in here. We can change the color. So these can sometimes give a really nice effect as well. We have artistic effects. I can't say I've ever used these in my PowerPoint presentation, but just know that they're there if you want to use them. And of course, we can change the transparency of our image as well. So lots of different ways that we can customize the look and feel of our images once we have them in the slide. Now, I want to remove all of these effects, so I'm going to click on the picture. Let's go back to picture format. And in the adjust group, we have a reset picture option. So reset will basically discard all of the formatting changes you've made to a picture. So if I click this, it's going to put it back to how it was when I imported it. So now we have our images in the document. We're going to move this on in the next lesson. So I'm going to head over there now. I hope you'll join me. Shapes play a really important role when you're putting together a PowerPoint presentation. We can use shapes for so many different things. We can create individual shapes, or we can combine shapes together to make an entirely new shape. So in this lesson, we're going to run through some of the things that you can do with shapes, and that will continue throughout the next few lessons. Now, if you want to insert a shape into your PowerPoint slide, if you jump up to the Insert tab, notice in the Illustrations group, we have a Shapes menu just here. And in this gallery, you're going to find all of your shapes divided down into different categories. And you're always going to have your most recently used shapes at the top of this list so that they're easy to access. But just take a moment to look through the different shapes that you can add, because not only do we have things like triangles, circles, rectangles, we have lines, we have arrows, we have things like equation shapes, flowchart shapes, stars and banners, and even callouts towards the bottom. Now we're going to start out by just adding a very basic shape. I'm going to choose this rectangle just here. When I click on it, notice that my cursor changes to a small crosshair. And now I can click on my slide and drag and draw my shape. Now notice that the aspect ratio of this shape isn't locked, meaning that I can drag it out, I can drag it down to create different shapes. Now if I wanted to create an exact square, you'll notice if we go back to the shapes gallery, we don't actually have a square anywhere in here. And that is because to draw a square, we would simply use the rectangle shape, but when we drag, we hold down Shift. And that's going to lock the aspect ratio and give us an exact square. The same thing applies to circles. So if we go back to shapes, notice that we don't actually have a perfect circle in here. We have this oval tool instead. So if I click on this and just drag it, I can make an oval, or I could try and make a circle if I wanted to. But all we need to do if we want a perfect circle is choose the oval and then hold down Shift again. So let's do that. Let's choose the oval. If I hold down Shift and drag, I get a perfect circle. So just be aware of that. Now notice with all of these shapes, as I've drawn them on the slide, they've all been filled with the same formatting, this blue color with a dark blue border. Now this is the default style for all of my shapes. And this will very much depend on the theme that you have selected in PowerPoint. So if I go to Design, the actual theme that I'm using in this presentation is this one just here, which is the standard default Office theme. And the first color in that palette is basically what these shapes are being filled with. Now, if I don't like this, maybe I want my default color to be something else, I can simply click on the rectangle. I'm going to go to Shape Format and I'm going to fill it with an entirely different color. So let's go for an orange, and I'm going to remove the outline border as well. So maybe this is the formatting that I want to see when I add any new shape. All we would need to do to make that happen is right click and choose Set as Default Shape at the bottom. So now every time we go in and draw a shape, let's just grab the rounded rectangle this time, it's going to have that formatting as opposed to the blue. Now, some of the things that you can do with these shapes, you can obviously resize them by dragging these handles in and out. You can rotate them by just moving this rotation handle around. And also notice that with some shapes, particularly those that have rounded corners, you're going to get this additional yellow handle as well. And this lets you basically adjust the roundness of those corners. So if I want it really round, I can do that. If I want it less rounded, I can do that. And if I have multiple shapes on a slide, I can select them all and apply formatting all in one go. Now when it comes to selecting multiple objects, we've already seen that we can click on one and then hold down the Shift key and click on the others. But there is another way that you can make multiple selections, and that is simply by clicking your mouse and kind of dragging a big rectangle over everything. That will select all of the objects contained inside. So now I have them all selected, I can go to the Shape Format ribbon and I can change the shape fill to something else, and it's going to change all of those. If I want to get rid of the outline, because we do have an outline on some of these shapes, I can choose No Outline. Also notice in here we have some shape styles that we can apply. So we can hover our mouse over these and see what they're going to look like. And if at any point I click on a shape and I think to myself, you know what, I actually want to change this for a different shape, again we can go to the Shape Format ribbon, and in the Insert Shapes box at the side here we can say Edit Shape, change shape, and then we can change it to something completely different. Now I'm going to delete some of these shapes that we've added so that we've just got these three left just here. Because what we can also do is merge shapes together. So maybe I want to create a shape that kind of looks like an upside down L, like that. Now currently these are still two shapes, but what I could do is put them next to each other, hold down Shift and select both of them, and then on the Shape Format ribbon I can go to Merge Shapes. And if I choose Union, it's basically going to combine those two shapes into one object, and I can now move this around, I can rotate it, and I've effectively created a brand new object. We can do other things here, so if I put the circle sort of like that over this shape, and then select the other shape as well and go to Merge Shapes, we have different effects. So we can combine, we can fragment, we can intersect, or we can subtract. So these tools here basically allow us to create different shapes. So I've chosen Fragment, and what it does is it basically breaks this shape up where it overlaps with the other shape. So now if I click this, I've got one part just here and we've got another part just here. And we can do different things and create different shapes by doing this. So if you're thinking that shapes are simply squares, rectangles, triangles, I hope you can see here that there's so much more that you can do with them. Now we're going to set ourselves up for the next lesson, and we're going to draw 3 circles on our slide. So let's go to Insert, let's go to Shapes, and I'm going to choose the Oval tool. I'm going to hold down Shift so I get a perfect circle, and I'm going to make this about that big. Now I'm going to duplicate this twice because I want 3 of them. So Control D, and I'm just going to drag these somewhere on the page. It doesn't really matter. And we're going to be utilizing these circles in the next lesson. And that's exactly where I'm going to head now, so I hope to see you over there. We finished up the last lesson by drawing 3 circles on our slide. I'm just going to zoom out so we can see those a little bit clearer. Now in this lesson we're going to turn our attention to talking about aligning and grouping objects on our slide. Because having objects on a slide that aren't quite lined up can really destroy the professionalism of your presentation. So it's good to know all of the tools you have at your disposal to get everything nicely lined up and looking really good. Now currently I have these 3 circles on the slide, and I want to line these up perfectly so that they're not only in line with each other and have equal distance in between each, but also so that they're in the middle of the slide. Now to do this we need to use alignment tools, and we also need to do some grouping. But before we get on to doing that, I want to speak to you a little bit more about Smart Guides. Now I mentioned Smart Guides in a previous lesson. These are the little guidelines that come up when we move objects around on the slide. Notice as I move this middle circle around, can you see that red dashed line? That's telling me that I'm exactly in the center of this slide. If I was to move this object down a bit, at a certain point I'm going to get another dotted line running across the middle. There it is, so I can now see that that circle is dead in the center of the slide because it's lined up both horizontally and vertically. But also notice I have another line running above the circle telling me that I'm lined up exactly with the circle next to it. And you'll see these appear as you move objects around on your slide. Now, these smart guides are controlled by the right-click menu. So if we right-click, notice we have a little option here called Grids and Guidelines, and when we hover our mouse over that little arrow, notice we have Smart Guides toggled on. We have a tick next to it. Now, if you don't have a tick in this box, when you start to move your objects around, you're not going to get those red guidelines. So just be aware of that. Also notice we can add guides, which will put these sort of permanent guides running down the center, vertically and horizontally. And if we take a look at some of the others that we have, we can turn off these guides, or we could simply just add a vertical guide or just add a horizontal guide. We also have grid lines that we can place on our page, and these are these small squares. We get kind of a grid formation here, and these are actually pretty good when it comes to lining up objects as well. So I can place that one there. I can say that I want exactly one square in between, and I can sort of try and line my objects up this way. And these grid lines are pretty good, particularly when you're lining up objects that are a lot smaller than the ones we have on the page right now. So those are some of the options that you have in that right-click menu. Now I'm going to turn off grid lines, but I am going to leave smart guides on. Now, as I said, I want to line these three circles up so that they're exactly lined up with each other and also the slide. We kind of have to position the first object and the last object so that they are the distance that we want away from the edge of the slide. So I kind of want this one just here, and I want this one to be kind of the same just here. So now we need to select all three objects. I'm holding down Shift as I make my selection, and you'll find your alignment options on the Home ribbon under the Arrange drop-down, or alternatively on the Shape Format ribbon, we also have an Align drop-down just here with the same options. So now I can choose if I want to align to the left, the center, the right, the top, the middle, or the bottom. Now, if I choose Align Top, all of my shapes are basically going to be aligned to the top of the first shape that I selected. So if I click Align Top, it's going to move the second and the third shape up so that they're in line with the top of the first shape. And the other thing I always like to do is make sure that they are also distributed evenly. So we have an even gap in between each shape. So I'm going to choose Distribute horizontally, and it looks like they pretty much had equal distance in between them. And if I decide to make any changes, so maybe I think actually these need to be a bit closer together, I can move them in a little bit, and then I can run through the same process. I'm going to hold down Shift, I'm going to say Align to the top, and I want to distribute horizontally. So now these shapes are lined up with each other, but they're not lined up to the middle of the slide. Now, when we're lining up multiple shapes to the middle of the slide, we basically want to make them one object, and we align that one object. And to do that, we're going to use grouping. So we're going to group all of these shapes together so they're no longer individual shapes. They're going to become one object. Now, there is a quick shortcut to be able to do this. Control G will group them together. Notice on the Shape Format ribbon, you also have a group option just here. So now these work as one object, and I can move them around as a group. So what I can now do is, with the group selected, I can go back to Align, and I could say Align to middle. And that's going to put them dead in the center of the slide. Of course, you have to remember that if you want to now make changes, maybe change the formatting of these individual shapes, you'll need to ungroup them again, and you can do that using the keyboard shortcut Control Shift G, or alternatively from the group menu you have an ungroup option. And now they're individual objects again. I can go in and maybe change the shape fill for some of these. Let's just go through and add a quick shape fill and make them all look different. But that is how you can align, group, and ungroup objects in your slide. Something that's really important to understand when you're working in PowerPoint is the Z order. Now, the Z order basically refers to layers that exist in PowerPoint. So let me show you a quick example. So working on slide number 3, where we added our shapes, if these shapes were layered on top of each other, so I'm just going to move these like that, they're effectively on 3 different layers. So the green circle is the top layer, it's the one that's at the front. Then we have the blue circle on a layer in between, and the purple circle is on the layer at the back. And this kind of stacking is what we refer to as the Z order. And we have tools that allow us to rearrange this Z order and bring objects that are at the back to the front and vice versa. For example, if I want to move this purple object to the front, I can go to the Shape Format ribbon, and then notice in the Arrange group we have Bring Forward and Send Backward. And if we click the drop down next to Bring Forward, we can bring forward or bring to front. So this again really relates to that Z order. If I bring the purple object forward, it's just going to bring it forward one layer. If I bring it to the front, it's going to jump it all the way to the top layer. The same thing with backwards. So now that this one is at the front, I can choose to send backwards, which will send it backwards one layer, or I could choose to send it directly to the back. So we're rearranging the Z order of objects on our slide. Now, another way that you can do this is by opening up the selection pane. And the selection pane is something that I use all the time because I find it so useful, because there is so much that you can do in this selection pane. Now, notice right at the bottom here in the Arrange group, we have the selection pane option. If we click it, it's going to open up a pane on the right-hand side. Now, what the selection pane does is it basically shows us all of the objects in our slide, everything we have sitting on our slide. So it's not going to show things like anything that you've added to the master, so it's not going to show the logo or the fact that we formatted the background, but it will show any objects. So currently it's just showing me those 3 circles that I added. Now take a look, they're named oval because we use the oval tool to draw circles. And these currently have very generic names, oval 14, oval 15 and oval 16. But if you notice, if I click on oval 16, it selects it in the slide. Click on 15, it selects it. Click on 14, it selects it. Now, we only have 3 objects on our slide, but a lot of the time you'll have a slide that contains many different objects. You might have quite a few different shapes. You might have pictures, you might have tables, things like that. And if you have a lot of objects that are fairly similar, like I do here, I've got 3 circles, identifying which one you want to select is pretty hard using the selection pane. So what I always recommend you do is that you open up the selection pane and you name all of your objects. So instead of just oval 14, I want to make this a bit more meaningful. So if I click in here, I'm going to rename this Purple Circle. If I click on 15, let's rename this one Blue Circle, and double click on the final one, and we're going to name this Green Circle. So now it's a lot easier for me to identify which one I'm clicking on. So we can make selections in here. For example, if I select green circle, maybe I want to change the fill color of this green circle. So now I've got it selected, I can simply go to my shape styles and I can add a new shape style. Now, what else can we do with this selection pane? Well, we can use it to change the Z order. We saw how we can do it previously by using those bring forward and send backwards buttons, but we can also rearrange things in this selection pane. So if I wanted the purple circle to be at the top, I can simply click on it and drag it all the way up and place it on top of everything else. I can drag the green circle down and that's now at the back. And remember, we changed the color of that green circle, so I'm probably going to want to rename this to Orange Circle. So we can adjust the Z order by utilizing drag and drop in the selection pane. Also notice in this same area, we have this little eyeball icon next to each of the circles in the selection pane. So if I choose the orange circle and click on the eyeball, notice that it hides the circle from view. Click it again and it brings it back. Now you might be thinking to yourself, well, why on earth would I want to do that? Well, sometimes in a slide you'll have things stacked on top of each other like this, and if I now decide that I want to maybe apply some formatting or add some text to this purple circle, because it's covered up by other things, it's quite hard for me to select and work on because these are in the way. Now, the only way for me to get to this would be to move these other objects out of the way, but a lot of the time you don't want to start rearranging things on your slide if you have them in the correct positions. So that is where this little eyeball is useful. Because what we can do is we can hide the orange circle, hide the blue circle, and then we can work on this circle just here. So maybe I want to add some text in the middle here. I'm just going to say hello. Let's select the text, let's format it and make it a little bit bigger. And once I'm happy with what I've done, I can unhide the other circles and they're back where they should be. So understanding the Z order and how objects are layered on top of each other is really important, and also knowing how to organize them and make changes to layered objects in the selection pane is also a really excellent tip to know. In the preceding few lessons, we've spoken about how to add shapes to our slides, how we can align those objects on the slide, and how we can rearrange the Z order. So now it's time to take a look at how we can fill shapes. And we can fill our shapes with many different things. We can just simply fill them with a solid color, like you can see on the slide here. We could fill them with a nice gradient. Or alternatively, we could fill them with a texture or an image. Now we're going to focus on filling with images in this lesson, because I've seen many weird and wonderful ways to try and do this over the years. So since the last lesson, I've made a couple of changes to this slide. So I've made sure all of my circles are aligned, they've got a consistent fill color, and I've just added the title, Meet the Team, and also some text boxes with the names of the heads of department underneath. And what we want to do is we want to fill those people's pictures in these circles. So let me show you a couple of different techniques that you can use. Now to do this, I'm using images that I've downloaded off of pexels.com. And you'll find the images that I'm using in the course files folder if you'd like to follow along. So the first one that we're going to fill here is the image of Christina. So let's click on the first shape. We need to right click and go into Format Shape. Now we want to make sure we're clicked on the bucket icon just here for fill and line, and then we can expand the fill section. So this is where we can determine what type of fill we want for our shape. So we can have no fill, we can have a solid fill, which is what we have now. We could have a gradient fill, a picture or texture fill, a pattern fill, or a slide background fill. And these are all pretty straightforward. They work as you would expect them to work, but we're going to go for a picture fill. Now notice, as soon as I select that, it's going to fill it with the first texture that it finds in the list. So don't get thrown off by that. All we need to do is select our picture source underneath. So I'm going to click on Insert, and I have my images saved off to a file. So let's click on From a File. And here are my images. So there is Christina. Let's select her and click on Insert. And you can see it's inserted her into the shape. But notice what's happened here. She looks a little bit squashed. And you will find this, that the aspect ratio is kind of off with the pictures when you fill shapes with them. So we need to do a little trick called crop and fill. So with the image still selected, we want to go up to the picture format ribbon, and then in the size group, we have a crop button. Now what we want to do is we want to fill the shape. So we're going to click on fill, and you can see immediately it fixes that problem. We can then move her around to position her correctly. We could even drag the fill handles if we want her to be a bit bigger or a bit smaller in that circle. So I'm going to kind of do it like that. Let's move her down very slightly, but I think that's just about perfect. So now that we have it in the correct position, we can click the top half of the crop button and we have a perfectly cropped image. Let's do that one more time. We're going to click on the next circle. We're going to go to picture or texture fill. Notice now it's going to fill the shape with the last image that I used. Again, don't worry too much about that. We're going to click on Insert, From a File, and this time we're going to choose Kerry. Let's click on Insert, and I need to do my crop and fill trick again. So let's go to Picture Format, Crop, Fill, and then I can move her around. I'm going to make her a little bit bigger because I want them all to be kind of a similar size. We don't want some people really far away and really small and some people very large. You want to keep them fairly consistent. So I'm happy with that. Let's click on crop. So we have our second perfectly cropped image. Now for the third one, I want to show you a slightly different technique. Because if you already have the image on a slide that you want to fill the shape with, you can copy it to the clipboard and fill with whatever you have on the clipboard. So for Matthew, let's go back to slide 2. Now this is the image of Matthew that I want to use. So it already exists on the slide. I'm going to press Ctrl C to copy that image to the clipboard. Now I can go back to slide 3, click on the shape, and when I go to Picture or Texture Fill, notice next to Picture Source we have a clipboard option. So let's click on Clipboard. It's going to paste him in. I still want to do my crop and fill trick, so let's go for that. I'm going to move him down a bit, and he's a bit further away, so we need to make him a little bit larger so he kind of matches the other two. I think he could probably go a bit larger than that as well. Let's move him into position. I think that's good. Let's click on crop, and now we have our 3 perfectly cropped images. So now that I have this slide, I don't really need slide number 2. Let's delete that out, and we have a very nice looking Meet the Team slide, and it's just taken us a few minutes to create. So now we have some nicely cropped images inside shapes in our slide. It's time to take a look at some of the formatting options that we have when it comes to shapes and pictures, because there are so many of them. And your formatting options are located in a couple of different places. So if we click on the first image here of Christina, notice what happens to our ribbons. Not only do we get a shape format ribbon, we also get a picture format ribbon. And that is because we essentially have a picture inside a shape, so we get both ribbons. So if I wanted to apply some formatting to the actual shape, this is the ribbon I would go to, whereas if I want to apply the formatting to the picture, I would go to the picture format ribbon. So maybe I want to make some changes to the color. We would jump over to the adjust group, and we have lots of different options in here. For example, if we click the color drop down, this is where we can sort of change the overall look and feel of our image. And these can be quite nice. If I select turquoise just here, you can see that that gives quite a nice effect. We could combine it with a nice white border, and for this we would go to the shape format ribbon because we want to add a border to the shape. So if we go to shape outline and select white, and then I could even make that border a little bit thicker. So we go down to weight, and then we could choose something that's a little bit thicker, and this gives quite a nice effect. Let's click on the second image, and we're going to go back to the picture format ribbon. We have some correction options in here, so we can sharpen or soften any of our images. And we can change the brightness and the contrast as well. And don't forget, we also have a transparency drop down just here, so that if we want to make this image more transparent, we can, or we can bring it all the way back to complete opacity. Now, what else can we do with these images? Well, let's click on Christina again. Let's go back to shape format, because what we can do is add some shape effects. For example, we could add a nice little drop shadow effect. We could add a reflection. If I choose this one, you can see what that looks like. This can look really effective on some images. Now, I don't particularly like that. Let's go back. We can add some glows. So let's go for a nice glow. Let's put that around the outside, and I'm actually going to get rid of that reflection. So now we have this nice glow effect. It's quite subtle, but it makes that image stand out. Now, some of the other things that we have on shape format, we have some shape styles. So you would use these if you wanted a solid fill inside your shape. We can also add text to our shapes, which I'm going to show you in a moment. And we have very similar options on the picture format ribbon. Now, aside from these two ribbons, if we right click, we also have a format picture pane. And you can see we have so many different options in here. So if you really want to make some granular adjustments to the formatting of your shape or your picture, you can come in here and you're probably going to find what you need. Now, a lot of these are repeats of what we have on the ribbon, for example, things like shadows, but you'll normally find that we have a few additional options, a few additional things that we can change to get it exactly as we want it to look. But don't forget about that right-click menu that contains more options. Now, the final thing I want to show you in this lesson, and I'm just going to insert a new blank slide, is how you can crop a picture to a shape. So we've seen previously how to fill a shape with a picture, but what if you want to actually crop the picture to a very specific shape? Well, let's insert an image. So I'm just going to insert a picture of Christina again in this example. There she is. Let's make her a little bit smaller. And maybe I want to crop her to, let's say, a triangle shape. Well, if we go up to the picture format tab in the crop drop down, we can choose crop to shape. Now this differs from crop because if we just select crop, we get these little fill handles and we can basically just crop out any blank space and click the top half of the crop button to apply it. But when we crop to shape, we can actually choose a shape that we want to crop to. So actually let's do a hexagon. I'm going to click on this and it's going to do exactly that. It's going to crop that image to a hexagon shape. So this can sometimes give a really nice effect as well. So don't forget about that when it comes to your pictures. We can of course then go in and we can apply a picture border if we wanted to make this look a little bit nicer. We could apply some picture effects, so maybe we want a glow around this one as well, and you can really go to town on how you format that image. So those are some of the options that you have when it comes to formatting your shapes. If we've applied formatting to any object in a PowerPoint slide, we can copy that formatting using a couple of different methods. And one of those is that we can use the Format Painter. If we go to the title slide, where I have Quantum Mesh Technologies, you can see that for Quantum Mesh, I've used this really nice kind of tealy green color. Now, maybe I decide that I want the entire title to be this color. What I could do is simply select the text that contains the color and then go up to the Home tab and click on the Format Painter icon. Now if I click on the Format Painter icon once, it's going to allow me to use my paintbrush once. Notice that my cursor has changed to a paintbrush and I can now simply drag it over what I want to change, let go, and it's going to copy that formatting. Now I don't want to actually apply that, so let's undo to put it back again. Now, if I wanted to do lots of painting, so maybe I wanted to paint other things on this slide, that green color, one thing to note is that when you click on the Format Painter icon once, it's only going to allow you to use it once. If you have to do lots of painting, then you need to double click on that icon. So let's do it again. Let's highlight this, but this time I'm going to double click on the Format Painter. So now I can select Technologies and my Format Painter is still activated. I could then select The Future is Today and it's going to apply that formatting. In order to come out of Format Painter mode, I would need to click on the icon again, or I can press the Escape key on my keyboard. So just be aware of that difference. Click once, you can use it once. Click twice and you can use it over and over again. Now I'm going to undo because I want this to be exactly as it was originally. Let's take a look at how this works when we have images. So if you recall, we applied some formatting to the image of Christina, and I want to copy this formatting across to the other two pictures. So let's try and use our Format Painter to do this. So if I click on Christina, go to the Home tab and click on Format Painter, if I then click on the image of Kerry, check out what it does. It does copy the formatting, but it also copies the image of Christina across. And that is because in this particular scenario, this is considered to be formatting. We've formatted the shape to include a picture. So PowerPoint thinks this is formatting, hence why it copies it across. So it's not quite as easy to use the Format Painter in this particular scenario. So what would we do if we wanted to apply this same formatting? Well, I would copy the formatting to the shapes first before I filled them with the images. So let's take a look at how that would work. So I've taken these shapes back to how they were originally. So what I would do here is I would select Christina. I would double click on the Format Painter because I need to paint twice. I would click on Kerry. I would click on Matthew. That's going to copy the formatting across, but I'm still going to have this image of Christina. Let's press Escape. I would then need to go in and simply replace the picture. So if we go to the Picture Format tab, we can go to Change Picture, this device. I can then pick up Kerry, insert her, and then I would do my crop and fill. So let's go to fill, let's drag her down. We're basically repeating the process that we did previously. And then click on crop. So once we've filled the shapes with our pictures, we then just need to go in and go to the Picture Format tab and apply our color. So it is a little bit more manual than I would really like it to be. It would be great if there was a much easier way to simply copy from one shape to another, but it's because the images are considered to be formatting. So the rule here, just to recap, is to draw the shapes first, apply the effects, then insert the image, and then apply any picture formats over the top. Now, the final thing that you can use when it comes to copying formatting is the Eyedropper utility. And we did look at this a little bit at the beginning of the session, but you might have forgotten about it by now. So let's say on this slide that I want to apply a border to this image, but I want the border to be the exact same yellow as the yellow that we have in the Quantum Tech logo in the bottom left-hand corner. Now I'm going to make this border a bit thicker so we can really see what we're doing. So let's go to picture format, picture border. I'm going to go to weight and let's make this pretty thick like that. So if I want to change this border color, what I can do is I can go to picture border and notice that we have an eyedropper utility. Now, if I click this, my cursor is going to change to a little pipette, and notice as I drag my cursor over the image, I'm getting a little preview of what the color is wherever my cursor is located. So this means we can basically pick up a color from anything that we have on our slide. So I'm going to go down to this yellow, click, and check it out. It's now applied that exact same color to the border of this image. So this is a really great utility for getting a consistent color scheme within your slides based on existing items within your slide. So don't forget about those two options. You've got your Format Painter and you have your Eyedropper utility. In this lesson, I'm going to show you how you can remove the background from an image. And I'll say this right up front, PowerPoint is definitely not Photoshop. So if you're looking for something as accurate and as detailed as Photoshop when it comes to cutting images out of their background, then PowerPoint is probably not going to be the right application for you. However, PowerPoint does do a pretty decent job, particularly if the image isn't all that complex. So let's take a look at the options that we have when it comes to removing the background. Now we're going to start out with an image. So let's jump up to the Insert tab. We're going to go to Pictures and this device. Now I'm just going to use this photo of Kerry. So let's select her and insert her into the slide. Now notice that this image does have a background, but it is fairly plain. So we should be able to get a pretty decent result using the Background Remover tool. Now I'm just going to make Kerry slightly smaller so we can see all of her. Let's go up to the Picture Format tab, and the first group here we have this Remove Background button. Now if we click on Remove Background, PowerPoint is going to do its best to determine which bits of this image need to be removed, and a lot of the time it won't get it completely accurate. You can see everything that currently shows in purple is what's going to be removed when we click the Keep Changes button on the background removal ribbon. Notice that we do have a brand new ribbon up here with some options to help us refine our selection. Now I can see here that I want to keep some parts of this image. For example, the laptop that she's holding is currently showing in purple. If I was to click Keep Changes, that's going to be removed. So what we can do here is jump up to the background removal ribbon and we can choose to mark areas we want to keep and mark areas to remove. So I'm going to click Mark Areas to Keep. Notice that my cursor changes to a small pencil, and all we need to do is kind of draw a line over the parts of the image that we want to keep. So I'm going to draw this line over all of these purple bits, and also at the bottom here for the bottom of her jacket. And you'll notice sometimes that when you make adjustments, you have to go in and redo other adjustments. So there we go, it's got it pretty much exactly as I want it. Now notice here, little parts of her hair are not included in this selection. When it comes to things like hair and sort of wispy strands flying out everywhere, those are going to be really hard to cut out of this image individually. So I'm pretty happy with the outline of the hair up here. So I'm just going to say Keep Changes. And there we go, we've cut her out of the background and it actually looks pretty good. Now, once we've done this, we could leave it like this. It looks pretty good in its own right. Or we could add another image in the background and create a composite image. So let me just show you what that looks like. If we go up to the Insert tab, I'm going to insert another picture again from this device. And let's just do a cityscape background. I'm going to click on Insert. Now notice when I've inserted this image, it doesn't take up the entirety of the slide. So this is again where we can use our crop and fill trick. So if we go to Picture Format, go into Crop and fill, we can then drag these handles out, like so, go back to crop and say fill. This will fill the entire slide with the image, but it won't distort the image at all. We can then click the top half of the crop button, and we need to send this image to the back so that we can see Kerry behind. So again, on the picture format ribbon, I'm going to go to the send backward drop down and choose send to back. So now you can see that we've created a completely different looking slide simply by cutting Kerry out of her original background and placing her on a new background. And it might be if you want to click on this background image, go to picture format and apply some different effects. So maybe you want to change the color. Maybe make it a dark teal, or maybe a nice orange color, or maybe you want to change the transparency. It's entirely up to you how you style this. But that's how you can use PowerPoint's background remover tool to cut an image out and place it on top of another image. In the final lesson of this section, we're going to take a look at some of the other types of graphics that we can insert into our PowerPoint presentations, and we're also going to see how we can customize them as well. Now, take a look at the presentation. You'll see that it's changed quite a bit since the last lesson. If we go back to slide number 3, we finished up the last lesson simply by cutting out this image of Kerry Hudson and placing her on the background of a cityscape to create a new composite image. Well, since then, I've kind of changed this to show you the potential and how slides can look in more of a business context. So we've got our cutout image, I've added a shape in the background and simply some text boxes in here. And I've done exactly the same for each of the other heads of team. So you can see we now have a slide for Christina Lopez, and we also have a slide for Matthew Lucas. So hopefully you can see here how we can start to bring elements together in PowerPoint and start to create some really nice looking slides just using some very basic techniques. So now that we have those, I've also inserted a new blank slide at the end, because we're going to take a look at some of the other types of graphics that we can insert. So if we go up to the Insert ribbon and go to the Illustrations group, let's click on Icons first of all. Now, we did touch on these earlier on in the course. I told you that we had an icon gallery built into PowerPoint with a selection of icons that we can use in our presentations. And you can see here we clicked on the Icons tab and we have all of these different icons. Now, these are divided down into categories, so if you can't see what you're looking for just here, maybe click on a different category like occupations and have a little scroll through. Or alternatively, you can click at the top here and you can type in what you're looking for. So let's type in brain. You can see those are all the icons related to that. Now let's insert one of these. I'm just going to select this icon just here and click on Insert. Now you'll see that by default it just inserts it with this black fill color, and we can resize this to make it bigger or smaller. Now when we insert these images, these are in fact considered to be graphics in PowerPoint, hence why we have the graphics format ribbon. So up here we can do things like change the color of the icon, but notice that it changes the color of the entire thing. Now, what about if I wanted to have different parts of this image different colors? Well, we can do that. We simply need to ungroup the image and convert it to a picture. Now, I'm not going to use this icon. Let's use something that's a little bit better. Let's go back to Insert and Icons, and let's use this image of an acorn. I'm going to select this and insert it. And let's make it quite a bit bigger. Now maybe I want just the top half of the acorn to be a different color to the bottom half. What we can do is we can ungroup this icon. Now to ungroup, we can simply right click, go down to Group and choose Ungroup, or alternatively, we can press Ctrl-Shift-G on our keyboard. Now we're basically getting a message asking us if we want to convert this object to a Microsoft Office drawing object. Now if you do want to change the color of different parts of an image, then you are going to need to convert it. So let's click on Yes. And you can see now I have two different parts. It's like I have two different images. I could even grab this one and move it around completely somewhere else. Now in this instance, I just want to change the color. So I'm going to select the top half of the icon, go to Shape Format and into Shape Fill. And I could choose, let's go for this sort of dark orange color. And I could change the bottom half to something completely different. So let's go for a green color. Now, I'm not saying that that looks wonderful, but hopefully you get the idea that icons in PowerPoint are customizable. Now, we don't want this image of an icon, so I'm going to draw a big square over both to select them and press the delete key to get rid of them. Now, we can do something similar with other graphics that we can insert. For example, if we go to illustrations, this is where we get a whole big gallery of these really nice little illustrations that we can add into our PowerPoint presentations. But notice that they're all currently in yellow. They have this yellow accent. Now, if that doesn't match the theme that you're using in your PowerPoint presentation, again, you can customize these. So if I was to choose this graphic just here and insert it into the slide, notice that instead of yellow, it's showing as blue. And that's because it's taking on the coloring of the theme that's in use in my PowerPoint presentation. But again, if I wanted to change this accent color, I would just need to go to Graphics Fill and I could change it to something else. I could even get it to match my current presentation by choosing one of these recent colors. So I could go for this teal or I could go for yellow. Let's go for teal and you can see what that looks like. We have ourselves a really nice looking graphic. And if you want to resize this, you can drag it down. Let's go back to Insert and back into Icons because we have cutout people in here as well. Now with these cutout people, there isn't a great deal that you can do to change the way that they look. But if we insert this one, for example, this is very similar to cutting out an image and removing the background, but these ones are already done for you. And we have these different characters. And you'll find that in this PowerPoint gallery, you have the same character just in different poses. So you could use the same character throughout your PowerPoint presentation to give it a consistent look and feel. Now we do have a picture format ribbon here, so we can do things like add picture effects, maybe add a reflection or maybe a shadow. We can't actually change any of the coloring on these cutout images though. If we go back to Insert, back into Icons again, one of the newer ones that we have in here is cartoon people. Now, if we select this, we can choose to basically create our own character. We have a category for faces, we have a category for heads, we have a category for upper bodies, so on and so forth. So you can kind of build your own character. If you would rather just select a whole character, we can click on characters just here and choose one from the gallery. So if I choose this guy just here and insert him in, I can move him, I can resize him, and I can also change the fill color as well. So if I go to the graphics format ribbon, I can change this to yellow and change the way that he looks. Again, if I want to change different parts of this image, I can ungroup by using the Control-Shift-G keyboard shortcut, saying yes to convert to an object, and now you can see that I can select different parts of this image. So maybe I want to color his trousers in a completely different color. So let's go to Shape Fill. Let's go for some jeans here. I can select the rest of him. Maybe I want to change that shape fill to, let's go for a black. I can select his beard and maybe make that like a gingery color, so on and so forth. So you can see the customization options here are pretty much endless. And let's go back to the insert ribbon one last time and take a look at the final few options. So we also have stickers and videos. Now, if we go to stickers, we have these cute little stickers that you could add into your presentation if you wanted to. I can't say I've ever really used these, but just be aware that the gallery is there. And we also have a videos library in here. This is stock video footage that's free to use within any of your PowerPoint presentations. So those are some of the other graphics that you can insert into PowerPoint to really jazz up your presentations. It's time now to do exercise 6. And in this exercise, we have quite a lot to do. So we're going to get to practice a lot of skills in this exercise. So sticking with the Coffee Beans company presentation that we started building in the last lesson, I'd like you to add a second slide and I'd like you to call it About the Company. So for this, we're going to use a blank slide layout. And I'd like you to turn on vertical guidelines. This is going to be really helpful to you when it comes to the next step, because I'd like you to draw a rectangle shape that fills half of the slide and use that vertical guideline so you know that that rectangle is exactly covering half of the slide. I'd then like you to download the image labeled aboutus.jpg from the exercise files folder. And I'd like you to fill the rectangle with the image. And it's very important to ensure that the image is not distorted. So think about the technique that we used in order to safeguard against that. Once we have the image inside the shape, I'd like you to add a title on the right side of the slide that says About Our Company. And then underneath that title, I'd like you to draw 3 circles. And I'd like you to ensure the circles have no fill and a thin white outline border. Make sure that those circles are aligned with each other and also distributed horizontally so that we have equal gap in between each. And then from the icon library in PowerPoint, I'd like you to search for mountain and add an icon to the presentation. I'd like you to resize the icon and position it inside the first circle. Now, I'd like you to repeat this process. So again, from the icon library in PowerPoint, this time I'd like you to search for time and add the egg timer icon to the presentation. I'd like you to resize and position the icon inside the circle. And then for the third circle, this time I'd like you to download the image values.png from the exercise files folder. I'd like you to resize and position the icon inside the final circle. So once you have those icons inside those circles, I'd then like you to change the color of the icons to green, accent 6, lighter 40%, or you can use the hexadecimal value that I have listed just there. I'd finally like you to add text boxes to the slide and recreate the layout shown in the screenshot below. So this screenshot is what we're aiming for, so use this as your guide. We have our image in half of the screen, we have our text boxes, and then we have those 3 circles with no fill, just a white outline border, with those icons that we've grabbed from various different locations inside. So that is what I need you to do. If you'd like to see my answer, then please keep watching. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to add a new slide, and I asked you to add a blank slide. Next, I wanted you to turn on your vertical grid lines. So we're going to right click and we're going to go to grids and guidelines and we're going to say add vertical guide. That's going to give us that line down the middle. Next, I asked you to insert a rectangle shape. So let's grab the rectangle tool that covers half of this slide. And I'm going to use my vertical guideline to help me do this. So we're just going to drag that all the way over. Now, one thing I'm going to do is make sure that we have no outline around the outside of that shape. Next, I asked you to fill this shape with an image that we can find in the course files folder. Now, there are a couple of different ways you can do this. I'm going to right click on the shape and we're going to go down into Format Shape. And we're going to expand fill and say that we want to fill with a picture. And we're going to insert our picture from our picture source. Now, our picture source is going to be from a file because we have it saved off to our hard drive. And this is the picture we want to use, aboutus.jpg. Let's click on Insert. Notice that this is slightly distorted. It's a little bit too thin. So we need to use our crop and fill trick to restore the aspect ratio of this image. So on the Picture Format tab, we're going to go to Crop. We're going to go down to Fill. You can see that looks so much better. We can choose to move this around a little bit if we need to reposition. I'm pretty happy with how that's looking, so I'm just going to click on the crop button to crop that perfectly. Now that I've done that, I can actually turn off my vertical guide like so. The next thing I asked you to do was to add a title on the right hand side that says About Our Company. So we're going to insert a text box. Let's go to Insert. We're going to go for text box. Let's just draw it just here. About Our company. And let's make this a little bit bigger. So I'm going to take that up to, let's say, about there. And again, if your fonts look different to mine, that is not a problem. We're just really practicing adding elements to our slide. Next, I asked you to add 3 circles underneath. So let's go back to Insert, Shapes. I'm going to grab the Circle tool. And remember, if we want a circle, we need to hold down Shift as we drag. So let's just add one like that. And what I want to do is format this. So I don't want a fill, but I do want a shape outline. And let's change the weight to, let's go for 1.5 points. Now I'm going to duplicate this twice, Control D, and then I'm going to drag these into position. Now notice the guidelines that are coming up. That looks about right. I think this one might need to go out a little bit more. But remember, when you're doing this, you can hold down Shift and select all of your shapes, and then you can use your alignment tool. So I want to make sure these are aligned to the top, and I also want to make sure they're distributed horizontally. So now that I have my shapes, I need to add my icons inside. Now we're going to go to the Insert ribbon and we want to insert some icons. So let's click Icons. And the first thing I asked you to search for was Mountain. And I'm going to use this one just here. Let's insert it. And we're going to change the color of these to, I think I asked you to do Accent 6, lighter 40%, which is this one just here. So then we can drag this into position and resize as necessary. Now I'm going to insert the second icon in exactly the same way. So join me back here once I've done that. And then the final icon we actually have saved off to the exercise files folder. So this time we're going to go to Insert, we're going to go to Pictures, this device, and there is the icon values.png. Let's click on Insert. Again, we're going to need to resize this. We're going to get it roughly the same size, and then we can drag it into position. I then just simply asked you to add some text boxes and recreate the slide in the screenshot. So this is very simple. Again, we're just going to add a text box. We'll just do the first one just here. And we had our mission. Now you can format these however you like. I'm going to make mine just a little bit bigger, and I'm going to change the font color to match that green, like so. And there we go. That's what it looks like after we've added our text boxes. I hope you got an okay with that. I will see you in the next section. In this section of the course, we're just going to take a look at some really cool things that we can do with text to liven up your presentations. And we're going to start out by creating a transparent text effect where we can see the background peeking through. Now, I've just added a blank slide to my presentation, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a text box. So let's draw a text box, and I want this lettering to be quite large. Now, I'm going to type in locations, and I want to change the font style. I'm going to use Fira Sans Black, which matches the other headings in my presentation. I'm then going to take this font size all the way up. So let's go to 96, and I think I want it even a bit bigger than this. So I'm going to use my increase font size button, and I think we'll take it down to about there. Now I'm going to position this in the middle. Notice that I'm using my smart guides in order to do this. Now that looks pretty nice, but maybe I want this to have a completely different effect, and I want it filled with an image. Now if you're thinking that we can just simply right click, go to Format Shape and choose Picture or Texture Fill, you would be wrong, because check out what happens if we do it that way. It's going to fill the actual text box as opposed to just the text. So we need to go about this in a slightly different way. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to insert the image that I want to fill this lettering with. So let's go to Pictures and this device, and we're just going to use this cityscape background. So let's click on Insert. Now the important thing here is that the image covers all of the text underneath. Now I'm going to send this image back so that we can see that text. Now all we need to do is select the image and then hold down Shift and select the text box. And then from the Shape Format ribbon, we can go to Merge Shapes. And then these different options that you can see in this drop-down list are going to give us all different kinds of cool effects. So if I go to Union, doesn't really do anything. Combine, that's going to allow me to have the image in the background, but it's going to show the background of the slide within the text. So if we just linger on this one for a moment, that one looks pretty nice if I wanted to have that image in the background and just the cutout text on top. We have fragment, doesn't really do too much, but the one that we want is intersect, because check out what happens. As soon as we do that, the image is now inside those letters. And I can use Shift and I can make this a little bit bigger if I need it to be. And once I have it in this state, I might decide that I want to maybe add an outline to make it stand out a bit more. So let's go up to Picture Format and Picture Border, and I can choose an outline color. Maybe I want a black, maybe I want something that kind of matches the color scheme of my presentation. So let's go for this teal color. And I'm actually going to make that border a little bit thicker. So let's go for 2¼ points. I could even go in and add a picture effect. So maybe I want a little glow as well. I'm going to go to more glow options and choose the same blue color. And check out what we have. We've created something that looks really effective and stands out from the background. And I think you'll agree that gives a really nice effect. In this lesson, we're going to take a look at how we can create a really cool looking slide using layers. And we've already briefly touched on layers when we were talking about the selection pane and the Z order of objects on our slide. And this is going to come into play in this lesson. Now, since the last lesson, I've added another blank slide and I've put it at slide number 2. And what I wanted to say on this slide is basically about us. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a text box. Let's draw one and type out about us. Now, once again, I'm going to select the text box and we're going to change the font to Fira Sans Black and I'm going to make it pretty large. So let's take it up to 72. I think we can go a bit bigger than that. I think that's pretty good. Let's drag it out so it's all on one line. Like so. And I'm going to place that just about there. Now, what I effectively want to do with this text is I want to add some images and I want it to look like this text is kind of flowing through those images. Now, I understand that's a bit hard to visualize at the moment, but bear with me, trust the process, we'll get there in the end. This does look really cool. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to duplicate this text box, Control D. That's going to give me another exact copy. Now, with the copy that I've just made, I'm going to change this so that we don't have any fill color, we just have an outline. So if we go up to Shape Format, we can go to Text Fill. I'm going to say No Fill. Looks like it's disappeared, and we're going to say that we want a black outline. That's all I want to do here. Now I think I'm going to make the outline a little bit bigger as well. Not too much, but we'll put it up to, let's say, 1½ points. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this back over the top of the original text. Now what we essentially have here are two different layers. If we open up the selection pane, notice we have text box 1 and text box 2. And it is quite difficult at this stage to tell which is which. So if I choose text box 1, let me just check what that is. So text box 2 is the outline. So I'm actually going to rename this to say text outline. And this one we'll say is text fill to make that more obvious. And then we can move this one back over this one. So we have our two layers together. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to slides 4, 5 and 6. I'm just going to copy the image of the employee from each of these slides. Now if you're doing multiple copies, it's always a good idea to have the clipboard open. Notice on the Home tab in the first group we have clipboard. Click the diagonal arrow and it's going to open up this little clipboard just here. And this clipboard basically allows us to gather different items and then paste them when we're ready to. So if I go to slide 4, I can select Kerry, I can say Control C. It says preview not available because it's an image, but that is basically the image of Kerry that we've copied. Let's go to slide 5, select Christina, Control C. You can see that's been added to the clipboard. And then finally we have Matthew. We select him, Control C. So now I can go back to the About Us slide and I can paste all of these by clicking Paste All. And you can see there they are. Let's close down the clipboard. Now I'm going to move these people into position, so I'm going to have Matthew about there, let's have Christina just there, and then I'm going to have Kerry just about there. And again, notice in the selection pane we now have those images added, so I would highly recommend that you label these as well. So this is the picture of Kerry. Picture 4 is Christina. And picture 5 is Matthew. So then it's a lot easier to see what we're working with. And of course you could change the order of these. If you wanted Christina to be in front of Matthew, you could move her up like so. Now you might be thinking, why on earth are we doing all of this? Because we now can't see the About Us title in the background. But what we could do here is we could grab the layer that contains the text outline and we can pull that up to the top to bring it in front of the image. So now Christina, Matthew and Kerry are kind of in the layers sandwiched between the text outline and the text fill. So we get this kind of cool transparency effect. Now, of course, if you don't like this, you can then move these around. So maybe I decide that I want these to be a bit further down, so that they're not obscuring quite as much, but we still have that really cool kind of transparent modern effect. And of course, if you don't like the fill color, you can change the text fill layer. So let's go to shape format. I could say that I want that to be white, for example. Maybe I decide that the text outline is a bit too thick. I can go back to that layer. I can modify the weight, maybe take that down so it's a bit thinner. And I could also change the text outline color to something like that. So you can really fiddle around with this, but hopefully this kind of gives you an idea as to the cool types of text effect that you can create simply by splitting the layers up and positioning images within those middle layers. So you can fiddle around with the positioning of these items and get the slide to look exactly as you want it to look. But I think this looks really cool, particularly if we run the slideshow. I'm just going to click the slideshow button in the status bar on the right. You can see how that's going to look to an audience, and this just gives a really cool modern looking effect, and your boss is definitely going to be wondering how on earth you did this. In the final lesson of this section, I just want to very quickly show you how you can fill text with a gradient fill. So we've seen a couple of other techniques in this section. We've seen how to fill text with an image. We've seen how to separate out the layers to give us a really nice text effect. But what if we just simply want to fill this piece of text with a gradient fill? Well, it is pretty straightforward. I've already added a text box to the slide with locations in the middle here. So what I can do is go up to shape format, and in the text fill drop down, this is where I can choose the gradient option. Now I can select different variations of gradient in here, and you can see the live preview update behind as I hover my mouse over each of these. But if you want to be a bit more specific about the colors that you're using in your gradient, you simply need to click on More Gradients. That's going to open up the Format Shape pane on the right hand side, and this is where we can go in and choose Gradient Fill. And then underneath we can choose the colors that we want to use in our gradient. And you can see here, because I was playing around with this previously, I have the actual branded colors already in here. But remember, with these gradient stops, we can select them and choose what color we want to use. So maybe if I select the yellow one, I can go to color and then I can choose a completely different color. So let's go for a light grey. I could choose this teal coloured one, and I could go for a dark grey, almost black, and then I can adjust these depending on how much of each colour I want to show through. Remember, you can also adjust the direction. So which direction do you want that gradient running through? Now, in this case, I do want these to be branded colours. So I'm going to click on the grey one. Let's change that back to teal. Click on the almost black one and change that back to this yellow colour. And of course, at this point, I could then scroll down and I could add a text outline if I wanted to stand out from the background a little bit more. So if I choose solid line, I can then choose the colour of my line. So maybe I want this to be a grey colour. I can change the width just by taking that up or taking that down. And then I could even go in and add some text effects if I wanted to. So again, we have things like reflection. I could add this to give us an entirely different effect. So gradient fills can look really effective when applied to text. Combine them with text effects, and soon enough you're going to be creating some really awesome looking slides. It's time now to do exercise 7. And in this exercise, we're going to practice some of the skills that we've learnt in this section of the course. So continuing on with our presentation, I'd like you to add a new blank slide and simply recreate the screenshot on the right. So I'd like you to download the file girldrinkingcoffee.jpg from the exercise files folder. And I'd like you to use the selection pane to assist with building this slide. Notice that behind the picture of the girl, we actually have two rectangle shapes to give this nice effect. Now, in order to be able to work with these shapes and change the colour, it's going to be useful to use the selection pane so you can make selections a little bit easier. So just bear that in mind. The final thing I'd like you to do is just add a text box, meet our leadership team, and use a gradient fill on the text using colours that already exist on the slide. So think about what tool you can use to pick up specific colours from this image of the girl to fill our gradient text. That's all I need you to do. If you'd like to see my answer, then please keep watching. So the first thing I asked you to do here was simply to insert a new blank slide. Now we know how to do that. We can go up to new slide and just select a blank. Next, I asked you to download the image of this girl drinking coffee and add it to the presentation. So you'll find this image in the course files folder. I simply went up to insert, pictures, this device, and grabbed this image just here. Now, the image that you see here is a little bit thinner than the one that you'll find in the course files folder, so I don't mind if you use the crop utility to make this a little bit skinnier, shall we say, by clicking on the picture, going to picture format and just cropping the outsides. Alternatively, you could have just drawn a rectangle and filled the rectangle with the image. Now, I asked you to use the selection pane to help you out with this, because underneath here we actually have two more rectangles, which I created just by using the draw tool underneath shapes. Now, if we go to shape format and open up the selection pane, you can see there are my different rectangles. And this is why it's important to name your items in the selection pane. So you can see here, rectangle 18 is actually the girl drinking coffee. So I'm going to name this girl. Rectangle 19 is the orange rectangle. So I'm going to say orange. And rectangle 20 is the beige one. So I'm going to name this beige just to make these a little bit easier to identify. So when I was changing the colour of these shapes, I was using the selection pane to make sure that I've selected them correctly. And then just simply going up to shape format and changing the shape fill colour. So nice and simple to do. The final thing to do here was just add a text box. Again, we just do that from insert and text box. Add the title, meet our leadership team, and then I asked you to fill this with a gradient fill color based on colors that we have in the current image. Now, the way that I did this was to right click on the text box and go to format shape. And then we're going to go to text options and we can choose our text fill. So I chose gradient fill from here, and then down here is where we have our gradient colors. So I'm using 2 gradient colors. If you used more, that's absolutely fine. Now, the way that I selected these colors was to use the Eyedropper utility to pick colors from this image. So to do that, we simply click the color drop down, we go to Eyedropper, our cursor changes to a little pipette, and then we can go in and we can choose the colors that we want to use. So I picked a couple of colors out of this image for each of these gradient stops. And that is what give me nice subtle gradient fill. That's all I need you to do in this exercise. I will see you in the next section. One of the biggest advantages to working with applications in Microsoft 365 is their cross-compatibility with other Microsoft 365 applications. For example, PowerPoint and Excel. Now, we can insert charts into our PowerPoint slides. These charts might be charts that are native to PowerPoint, as in we build them in PowerPoint and insert them into a slide. Or we can create a chart in an application like Excel, which has a lot of charting options, and we can link to the data from our PowerPoint slides. So let's take a look at both options. Now you can see here I've added a blank slide onto the bottom, slide number 7, and I've just given it a title of Sales 2019 to 2023. Now maybe I want to display a nice looking line chart that shows the progression of sales over a period of time. So what I can do is jump up to the Insert ribbon, and in the Illustrations group we have a Chart option. So I can click on Chart, and if you are used to using an application like Excel, this is going to look really familiar because we have the same charting options in here. Now there are so many different types of chart that you can use in PowerPoint, and you can see they are all divided down into different categories. Now, I will say that when you're thinking about inserting a chart, not all charts are suitable for the data that you want to display. But a general rule of thumb that I apply is column charts and bar charts are suitable for most types of data. If you want to insert a line chart, this works best with data that changes over time. For example, showing sales figures from one year to another. Pie charts work best for smaller data sets where you're just doing a direct comparison with maybe 2 or 3 items. And then we have some very specific chart types. For example, a map chart, stock charts, tree map charts, things like that. Now, we're definitely not going to have time to go through all of these. I would encourage you to have a little play around with these and explore. We're going to insert a line chart, and we're going to choose a line chart with markers. Notice just above we have all different styles of line chart that we can choose from. So this is the one that I want. It's just going to have those markers on the data points. Let's click on OK. And what that will do is it will insert the chart into the slide, and it's going to open up this mini Excel spreadsheet just above. Now, in this mini Excel spreadsheet, you can see that we have some sample data. And PowerPoint kind of needs this to be able to plot the chart. But of course, we can go in and we can modify this to suit our needs. So where we have Series 1, Series 2, and Series 3, you can see that these are what are going to appear in the legend at the bottom. So maybe I'm displaying sales data for 3 different categories: hardware, software, and accessories. I could jump into here and I could change Series 1 to hardware, Series 2 to software, and Series 3 to accessories. I could then change the categories to the years. So let's say 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023. Now notice, because I've added in more years than the original selection, you can see where we have these colored borders, the purple, the blue, and the red. This is telling me which data is currently being included in the chart. And this is kind of preset to 5 rows and 4 columns. So if I want to include 2023 data, I can simply grab the bottom of this and drag it down. Now we can update our data. So I'm just going to put some dummy figures in here, and you can see as I'm adding it in, the chart is updating, like so. Now, once you have all of your data in here, you can close down this Excel spreadsheet, and then you can go in and start applying some formatting to your chart. For example, I might want to make this a bit smaller so it fits on the slide a little bit nicer. Now, currently this doesn't really stand out from the background of the chart. So I'm going to click on the border of this chart and notice that we now have a chart design ribbon and a format ribbon. Now, if we go to chart design, we have some preset chart styles that allows us to quickly apply formatting to our charts. So I could choose one of these. If I want to be a bit more granular and detailed, I could go to the Format tab and I can choose Shape Fill and choose my background fill color from here. Now I'm going to keep with the style of my branding and I'm going to give this a dark blue background. Now that I've done that, the text doesn't really stand out. Now, when you click in this chart, you'll see that a lot of these items are in fact just text boxes. So if I click on chart title, I can go to home and I can just change the font color to white. I can make it bold. I can even make it bigger if I want to. I can click on the vertical axes and make these white. I can click on the horizontal axes and make those white, and even click on the legend and change that font color as well. So immediately this looks a lot easier to read. A couple of other things I might want to do. Maybe I want to change the color of these lines. And remember, unless you specify, these are going to use your office theme colors. Now, if we click on the blue line and go to format, I can choose to format this with something completely different. And notice I'm using the shape outline tool to format these lines. So I could go for yellow just here. I'm going to click on the green line. Let's go to shape outline. And I'm going to choose that bright blue. And then for the third one, I'm going to go to shape outline and let's just do a bright green. I can also change the color of the markers. So notice these tiny little markers. If we click on them to select them all, we can do the same thing. We can change the shape fill from here. But if we wanted to maybe modify the size of these markers or even the style, whether they're round or square or triangles, we would need to right click and go into Format Data Series. And then from here, we can click on the fill bucket and we have a marker section. So when we expand marker options, I could choose built in, and then I can choose the style of marker I want to use. So I'm going to choose a diamond, but I'm going to make that diamond a little bit bigger. And you can see that reflecting in the chart. I'm going to say I want a solid fill color because I want these markers to be, let's make them red so that they really stand out. And I don't want a border. Click away and you can see what that looks like. And we can go in and we can do exactly the same for the other two lines, like so. Now, I'm not saying that that looks the greatest, but hopefully you get the idea as to the types of things that you can change on these charts. I could even modify these grid lines in the background. Now, with some of these chart elements, when you're selecting them, they are a little bit difficult to actually select, such as the grid lines just here. Now, if you're finding making selections a problem in your chart, if you go up to the Format tab, in the first group where it says Current Selection, this is where we can click the drop down and we can actually choose which element we want to format. So I want to format the grid lines. You can see here, vertical axis major grid lines. Let's select it and you can see that those are now selected in the chart. I can go up and I can change the color of these to something that blends in more with the background. For example, this dark teal color just here. Also notice when it comes to chart formatting, if you click on the chart, we have these three buttons pop out to the side. So if we click on the plus, this is where we can go in and quickly add in different chart elements. For example, if I wanted to add data labels, that's going to show me the actual labels on the chart. You can see that there are a darker color, so I'd probably want to go in and change the font color to white so that those stand out. If we deselect, those disappear. We can add in axes titles. So again, over here, I get this little text box. I'm going to change it to white so it's easy to see, and I could add in a title for my axes. Sales totals, for example, and then underneath we have another one. I'm going to change this text box to white font, and this one we want years. And of course, we want to make sure that we give our chart a meaningful title, like so. So that is one way that you can insert a chart into a PowerPoint slide. You can create it from scratch. Now, another way that you could do this is to simply copy and paste the data directly from an Excel spreadsheet that you already have created. So let's go in and let's add another new blank slide at the bottom. And I have this same sales data, but I've got it saved off into an Excel spreadsheet. So here is that same data in an Excel spreadsheet. So if it already exists, what you can do is simply copy it by selecting Control C, going back to PowerPoint, going to Insert, Chart. You can select your chart type. Let's do a line chart again with markers. And then this time you can just simply Control V to paste that data in. And notice that the chart will automatically update. You can then go in and apply your formatting. Now, another interesting thing, if we just close this down and delete that out, maybe we have a slightly different scenario. Maybe we already have the chart and the data in an Excel spreadsheet, and we want to link to this chart from PowerPoint. Once again, we can select the chart, Control C to copy it, go back to PowerPoint and Control V to paste it in. Now notice what's happened here. Designer has popped open with lots of different suggestions for me. So I could choose one of these if I wanted to. Let's go for that. Why not? So you can see what that looks like. Now it's brought across this chart. If I was to go to the Chart Design tab and choose Edit Data, it's going to open up that Excel spreadsheet. And look at what it tells us at the top. This data is linked to an Excel spreadsheet. Changes made here will save to that spreadsheet. So it means that if you copy and paste this in and you start making changes to it here, it's also going to update in the spreadsheet. And vice versa, if you make changes to the data in the Excel spreadsheet, it will update in the PowerPoint slide because it's all linked through. So those are a couple of different methods for creating charts when you're working in PowerPoint. In the previous lesson, I showed you how you can very quickly create a chart and add it to a slide in PowerPoint. And you can see since the last lesson, I've jazzed this up a little bit by choosing one of the designs suggested to me by Designer. And really, I just wanted to show you this because they really do format these slides really nicely. So I've applied that to slide number 7. And in this lesson, we're going to move on to talking about another type of diagram or chart that we can insert into our slides using something called SmartArt. Now, if you've never used SmartArt before, you'll find it on the Insert ribbon. In the Illustrations group, we have a SmartArt button just here. And SmartArt basically allows us to insert diagrams into our presentation. And you can see here that we have all of the different types of diagram divided down into different categories. So what you choose from here is really going to depend on the type of diagram that you want to create. You can see we have diagrams related to lists. They will list out information in a more interesting way. We have process diagrams. So if you're trying to illustrate some kind of process flow, maybe the process of logging a help desk call, you could illustrate that using a SmartArt diagram. We have cycle charts in here. We have hierarchy charts, which are great for quickly creating organizational diagrams. We have lots of different types of charts that we can utilize. Now, some of these charts not only allow us to add text into diagrams, but also pictures. And notice we have a picture group here, which shows us all of the different SmartArt diagrams across the different categories that allow or account for pictures. So just be aware of that as well. Now, you can insert a SmartArt diagram from here and then add your information, but I'd like to show you a slightly different way, which I think is pretty cool. So let's cancel out of here. Now notice in slide 8, I've written out the process for our company sales pipeline. And I've just written this out as a series of bullet points. So it goes through from identifying and targeting potential leads all the way through to closing the deal and ensuring customer satisfaction and post-sale concerns are addressed. Now this is fine, written out as a bullet pointed list, but it's not particularly interesting. We could very easily quickly convert this to a SmartArt diagram. So what we can do here is we can select the text box that contains the bullet points, and then on the home ribbon in the paragraph group we have this little icon just here, convert to SmartArt graphic. Now if I click the drop down, I get a few choices from up here, and you can see as I hover over exactly what that's going to look like. Now, if I want to be very specific about what I'm choosing, I can go to More, SmartArt Graphics. And because this is a process, I'm going to choose the process category. And now I have access to all of these different diagrams. So maybe I want to use this one just here, the continuous block process. Click on OK, and you can see exactly what that does. Instead of those bullet points, it's now converted them to a much easier to read diagram. And every element of this SmartArt diagram can be modified. Notice we now have a SmartArt design and a format ribbon at the top. So if we go to SmartArt Design, we can change the SmartArt style in use. Some of these are quite nice. Again, I suggest you hover your mouse over them to see the different effects. I'm going to choose white outline. We can change the colors. So again, these will very much be based on the theme that you have in use in PowerPoint. If you want to change each one of these boxes individually, then you simply need to select the shape, go to Format, and then you can fill it with whatever color you like. Now, just for quickness sake, I'm just going to change it to one of these colors. So let's just go for this one. Keep it in the blue range. I might want to change the background fill of the arrow, so I can select that, go to Format, Shape Fill, and then I can choose the color of the arrow. So maybe we want a nice yellow arrow in the background. But check out how quick that was to liven up what was a very dull bulleted list. Let's take a look at another way that we can utilize SmartArt graphics. If I go to slide 9, notice that I have an organizational chart just written out in bullet points. So at the top here, we have the CEO, Oliver, and then we have Christina Lopez, Matthew Lucas, and Kerry Hudson, who all work for Oliver. And you can see that I've constructed this hierarchy by simply using bullet points. And wherever an employee works for somebody else, I've tabbed them in a level. So we can see that Joseph and Lucy, they work for Christina, Neil, Caroline, and Bree work for Matthew, and Alex and Hannah work for Kerry. Now, it is worth noting that you don't necessarily have to start with all of the names written out. You can simply insert a blank organizational chart. For example, if we go to the Insert tab and click on SmartArt, if I just wanted a blank one, I could go to Hierarchy, select the one that I want, click on OK, and it's going to insert that into the slide. And I can then go in and start manually editing it and adding in the different names. But you can also write the names out first of all, select them, and create the organizational chart from there. So if we select all of the names, right-click, we have Convert to SmartArt. And from here, I'm going to choose this one, the organization chart. Let's click and check it out. It automatically builds that hierarchy for us. So we can see Oliver at the top, then we have Christina, Matthew, and Kerry, and then all of the people underneath that work for them. And of course, when we click on the SmartArt object, we can then do things like change the color. Alternatively, as I mentioned before, you don't necessarily have to use one of your theme colors. You can go in and change the color of individual items. So if I click on Oliver at the top here and go to Format, I can simply change the shape fill. So maybe I want to keep this within the colors that I'm using in this presentation. So let's go for a dark indigo. Maybe I want the next three. Hold down Shift to select them. Shape fill. Let's go for yellow just there. And then maybe I want everybody else. So I'm just going to go through and select all of those. I'm just holding down Shift as I do this. And I can go to Shape Fill and change those to what I need them to be. So very quickly there, we've created a branded organization chart. If I want to add more people, so maybe we have another head of team that we need underneath Oliver. I could select Oliver at the top here, go to SmartArt Design, and notice in the first group here, we can add a shape. Now this person is going to be underneath Oliver, so we're going to say add shape below. And you can see it adds another branch over here. Now it doesn't carry across the formatting, so you will need to go in and change that to the formatting that you want, but then you can simply right click, choose Edit Text, and add in the new name, like so. And I could carry on going, building out my organization chart. Also note that if you want to change the colors of the actual lines within the organization chart, you can do that as well. But there are quite a lot of them. If we go to Format, Shape Outline, maybe I want these to be white. And you can see it just changes that little section just there. So I would need to go in and change each section. So this can be a little bit tedious if you want to change the colors, but you can definitely do it for the lines as well. So that's how we can use SmartArt to display our information in a more visual way by creating graphics and charts. Two other things that we can insert into our slides are screenshots and clippings. And if you've ever inserted a screenshot before, you'll know that historically we've always been able to press the print screen button on our keyboard to take a screenshot of whatever we have in front of us. These days we can do exactly the same thing without leaving PowerPoint. But we have two different options. We can take a screenshot or we can take a screen clipping. Now you're going to find all of these tools on the Insert tab. In the Images group, notice we have Screenshot. And it says as we hover over, quickly add a snapshot of any window that's open on your desktop to your document. And this is actually a really important thing to note. Whatever you want to take a screenshot of needs to be open directly behind PowerPoint. And you'll see why in a moment. So let's click the drop down. Notice that we have available windows and also screen clipping. Now, available windows is basically showing me anything that I have open behind PowerPoint. And currently I have two different web pages open. So these are available for me to take a quick print screen or screenshot of. So if I click on the first one here, which is just the Simon Says It website, I can click it and it's going to directly insert that screenshot into my presentation. Notice because it's an image that I've inserted, Designer is popping open on the right hand side and giving me some suggestions. So I could choose to use any of these if I wanted to. Now I'm not going to in this case, I'm just going to close down that pane because once we have our screenshot in the slide, notice we have the picture format ribbon. So we can treat it like any other picture. I can resize it, I can move it around, I can add a picture border or maybe even some picture effects. So taking a screenshot is really simple. Now what about a slightly different scenario? Maybe instead of taking a screenshot of the entire window, I simply want to grab the logo Simon Says It at the top here. Well, for this we would use screen clipping. So let's delete out our screenshot, go back to Insert and into Screenshot, and at the bottom we have screen clipping. Now this is where it's really important to have exactly what you want to take a clipping of directly behind your PowerPoint window. Now if I click on screen clipping, it just minimizes PowerPoint and reveals what is behind. And notice we kind of have this faded out opacity over the top and our cursor has changed to a crosshair. So this means we can now go in and select a region specifically from this page that we want to clip. So maybe I want to clip the logo. I can simply drag over that, let go, and it's going to insert it into the presentation. I could go back and take another clipping. So let's go to screenshot. Let's go back to screen clipping. And maybe this time I want this section just here. I can just select it, let go, and it's going to allow me to paste it in. And once again, we get the picture format ribbon because these are effectively pictures that we can format. So that's the difference between those two utilities. I'm going to delete out this because it doesn't really make too much sense in the context of our presentation. Maybe this time I want to take a screen clipping of an image from Pexels. So instead of downloading it, I could simply clip it. So I've opened up Pexels behind PowerPoint. Let's go to Insert, Screenshot, Screen Clipping. It's going to minimize down and then I can go in and I can take my screenshot. So let's grab this. Let's insert it. There is the image. You can see that Designer has popped open on the right hand side and I could choose any of these templates if I want to. So maybe if I go for this one, you can see what that looks like. And once again, this is simply just a picture. We've got the picture format ribbon and we can go in and we can make any changes that we want to make to style up this image. So don't forget about those two utilities. Super useful if you just want to quickly grab something and insert it into your presentation. It's time now to do exercise 8. And in this exercise, we're going to practice some of the skills that we've learned in this section of the course. So the first thing I'd like you to do is download the file coffeesales.xlsx from the exercise files folder. This is an Excel spreadsheet. I'd like you to use the data in the spreadsheet to create a bar chart in PowerPoint to show Q1 sales only. I'd like you to apply the Style 12 chart style. Next, I'd like you to move the legend to the right of the chart. That is it. That is all I need you to do. If you'd like to see my answer, then please keep watching. Now for this exercise, I'm going to insert a title and content slide. Now, if you didn't insert one of these, that's fine. If you just did a blank, not a problem. But this just makes it super easy to add things like charts. Now I'm just going to give this a title. I'm going to call this Our Sales. And I'm going to click on the Insert Chart icon. Now, I asked you to insert a bar chart. So bar charts are basically very similar to column charts. They just run horizontally across the page as opposed to vertically. So let's click on OK. Now, what this is going to do is it's going to insert the bar chart and it's going to open up a mini PowerPoint window with some sample data. Now, obviously, this isn't the data that we want to use. We want to use data from our coffee sales spreadsheet. So let's open that up from the exercise files folder. So here is our spreadsheet, and you can see here it lists out the months of the year, January to December, and the most popular coffees, cappuccino, espresso, and latte. Now, I asked you to only include the sales for Q1 in the chart. So we're not going to select everything just here. We're going to select just the first 3 months for Q1. Control C to copy. Let's jump back to PowerPoint. Now what we're going to do is we're going to click in our little mini spreadsheet and Control V to paste that in. Now notice here we have category 4. We don't need that. We can right click and delete. So we just have our data set. And you can see what that looks like below. Now I asked you to change this to chart style 12. So from the drop down just here, there is chart style 12. Let's click. Now, if you change the colors, that's absolutely fine. In fact, I'm going to change mine to this nice colorful palette 4, and then I can just do some tidying up. So we can add in things like a chart title. And what I'm also going to do is I'm just going to move and reposition some of these items so that we don't have things crashing into each other. The next thing I asked you to do was to display the legend on the right-hand side. So let's click on the chart, let's click the plus, and where we have legend, we can simply say right, and that's going to move that up. And that is pretty much all I needed you to do. I hope you got an okay with that. I will see you in the next lesson. A huge congratulations everybody for making it all the way to the end of this PowerPoint 365 training course. I hope you've enjoyed running through the lessons and the exercises as much as I've enjoyed hosting this course for you. And we've come so far since the beginning of this course, and we've ended up creating a really nice looking presentation, not only during the lessons, but also during the exercises as well. And my hope for you is that you take the skills that you've learnt in this course and start applying them to your daily work, because that is where the real learning comes in. Using PowerPoint every day is fundamental to becoming an expert in PowerPoint. But hopefully this course has given you enough information to not only get you excited about creating slides, but also the skills that you need in order to do that. So I'd just like to leave you with a few of my favorite free resources. So when it comes to inserting images and video into slides, I generally tend to go to these 3 websites: Pexels, Unsplash, and Cover. You'll find free, royalty-free images and video on these websites, and we've used a couple of them in the course so far. If you're looking for more icons, so maybe you're finding the inbuilt icon library in PowerPoint a little bit limited, you have a choice of thousands on sites like the Noun Project and Ion Icons. If you're looking for inspiration, well, I generally tend to go to Pinterest or Envato Elements, where you can find lots of examples of great presentation design. And finally, fonts are so important when it comes to your PowerPoint slide decks. And if there are particular fonts that you'd like to use or special fonts for particular presentations, you can really expand PowerPoint's inbuilt font gallery by downloading and installing fonts from Font Squirrel, Google Fonts, or FontJoy. So with all that said, it is time for me to say my goodbyes. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Once again, my name is Deb. I'll see you next time.
If you're not a subscriber, click down below to subscribe so you get notified about similar videos we upload. To get the course exercise files and follow along with this video, click over there. And click over there to watch more videos on YouTube from Simon Says It.